Good morning, everybody. Welcome again to this council meeting. Welcome to members of the public who may be watching online or in the chamber, and welcome to councillors and staff. We've got a number of things on the agenda today which we won't be addressing because they, due to other workloads, they haven't been delivered. So we'll be passing those ones. Just got to work out where I'm at the moment. So first of all, though, we'll go to apologies. So, do we have any apologies? None. Any declarations of interest? None. Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Blackler.
Agenda item 7.6 obviously is about myself, so I won't be taking part in the decision around that.
Good as gold. Thank you. Right, we've got one member for the public forum, Ray Henderson. So, morning, Ray. Welcome. I'd like to take a seat, and I think you know the drill by now. Floor is yours.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me in. I could have sat at home and asked questions online, but I thought it was very important to actually come in here and let our residents know that things aren't good. And hopefully the people that are watching out there can let their friends know as well that things aren't good. Today, I'm looking at numbers. The annual plan, submissions on the annual plan or consulting on the annual plan, we were basically sold a lemon, or maybe we're just given a lemon to suck on. But I see the draft annual plan, which informed the submissions process, had borrowings in a couple of places of totaling 66 million. Or yeah, just under 66 million. It's on page 57 of that draft plan. The annual plan you're looking at now, most of those figures are the same, apart from 2 or 3 million here and there, which is really nothing these days. But the total borrowings have gone to 99 million. So I can't figure out how, when all those other figures are basically unchanged, that suddenly that level of borrowings has jumped up dramatically. And worse than that, if we look at, I think it's from the Power Committee today, this afternoon, it's got the projection for 10 years, and our 99 million by 2034 will be just under $500 million. Again, it just grows and grows and grows. Now, if I run my household by maxing out my credit card and going down to the bank and getting another credit card or another LGFA loan, things would fall apart fairly rapidly. So I can't figure out why this is necessary that we keep borrowing. The other confusing thing is when I look at the council's 10-year financial projections, we've got the operating receipts, which is how the council keeps itself going, basically, with money coming in. Receipts from other revenues go from 45 million to 30 million over 10 years. So in other words, they drop. So that's not a very good income. The dividends received, 350,000, I assume is Whitestone, basically. That's fixed for 10 years. So in all this times of increasing costs, how come Whitestone Roading wouldn't be a source of revenue for an increased dividend with the work that they must be doing? But anyway, it's fixed for 10 years at 350. Maybe not in a contract as such, but in the books. The interest received, which we get from money we do have, if we have any at all, that goes from 2.7 million to 1.2. So that's dropping. So how are we going to afford all this stuff? Well, of course, it's the cash cow, the ratepayer. The receipt from rates revenue, 2025, 45.6 million, 2034, 89.5, basically 100% increase. Well, that's a good way to pay for things. And then if we look at what are we covering, what do we have to cover? The operating payments, the employee costs, which should be dropping dramatically in the future with our transformation project, 18 million this year or next year, be 24 million by 2034. So that's a 33% increase. So transformation, if it is working or going to be working, it's not working very well. The other costs, now we thought if we're going to have a needed increase in income from our poor old ratepayers, then there must be costs somewhere. Well, the other cost over the 10-year period go from 44 million to 47 million. Well, that's hardly dramatic. So why are we dragging all this money off the ratepayer? Well, one of the reasons you can see is that the interest paid, which is basically loan on the LGFA loans, 2.6 million in 2025, 14.9 million in 2034. So this is just plain ridiculous, that we can't just keep borrowing money and just paying dramatic interest and then charging the ratepayers for the privilege. So that's where I'm at. That's the figures I'm looking at, and they're bloody scary.
And I don't think you'll get any disagreement around this table, Ray. Most of what you talked about is in the PAR meeting, which is next rather than this meeting. So we will be talking about a good amount of those things. There are a lot of assumptions. They are based on, what we've been actually saying to the community, that we do need to spend pretty much for over $400 million on water infrastructure alone over the next 10 years. And that's a challenge we've got. Reality is we won't be doing that sort of spending. It's the table has been produced to give an indication of if things don't change, this is what it's going to be. The reality is we couldn't borrow that much money anyway. We wouldn't fit within the debt ceiling that the council's allowed. So it is produced to actually give us a reality check on what the situation is if things go unabated. One of the things, there's a number of things. So things like the Whitestone dividend and so on, that's been kept level because that's just the assumption is this is how much we'll get each year. Obviously, we will want it to be increasing each year, for example. There are some of the other things around, working with the government on city or regional deals that we hope will be successful in. They are putting together a template for that, and that'll be something that will allow us to get extra funding coming in. And these figures help justify that case. If anything, it's like we can show this is what we need to spend on making sure that infrastructure and everything that you want us to do is up to spec. We need your help. Ratepayers cannot take all that burden. So it will serve its purpose, but it is scary, and that's the reality of it. That's what we've said right through the annual plan discussions. We've been saying this is the problem we're facing, and it's good. You have taken the time to go through and look at those things. We appreciate that, and not everyone does. So thank you.
The other thing is regarding the limits, the constrained limits on borrowing, et cetera, et cetera. I'm very concerned that there's the proposal, a suggestion of getting a credit rating, et cetera, which means that if we are going to exceed the 175%, then get a credit rating, we can go to 200 and something percent. But I believe if you did that, then that will last 1 year, and then you're going to blow that anyway. So, but the whole thing is, it's again the same thing as we're running out of money. Let's just borrow some more money to patch up the hole. And it just, it doesn't work. It can't work. There's a limit to it.
Yeah, and before I go to Councillor Hopkins' question, essentially borrowing is not for day-to-day business as usual stuff. It's for the upgrades and so on that we're required to do. It helps spread it so it's not just today's ratepayers that pay for it. It's the ones who are in our community in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, 20 years' time. So the debt is useful in doing that, but we don't want to borrow what's being predicted that we need to borrow. So we need to find other solutions, and that's absolutely a driver for us. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, Ray, thank you. And I share Mia's view that it's actually good that people in the community are reading the material and sharing concerns that will undoubtedly be expressed by councillors. I just wonder, in respect of the PAR meeting, you've cited the figures, but did you also, when reading that, see that the officers report that certain things could not be tolerated or were untenable, and a range of proposals, establishment of a holding, possible solutions, establishment of a holding company, a CCO for water, reduction in services, shift to user charges. I mean, there were a whole raft of proposals that actually recognised that these were untenable, unacceptable and impossible, and that steps would have to be taken to ensure they did we did not arrive at those destinations. You did see that or did?
Yeah, no, I read on further. That's what was touched on with Gary about the credit rating, et cetera. And then all part and parcel of that was the holding company. I have delved into that in detail to see that's suggestions about how to cope with it. Because when you look at our little graphs where it goes from the green to the orange, and there's a whole lot, it's only about 3 years away, and we're all of a sudden, the next 7 years, we're in a still pretty bad situation, which can't be tolerated. And unfortunately, the council's looking at ways it can cope, but you must remember there's ratepayers out there that really are trying to cope, and they can't sort of start playing around with things. I'd love to make myself a holding company and look after my debts, but I don't think that really works.
Thanks, Ray, and we'll ask staff to address that issue around the debt drawdown comparison between the draft annual plan and the what's been presented today. So
the councillors have missed that, but that's sort of matter. They're dealing on the second plan today. I was concerned that the councillors are dealing with an annual plan approval today that is vastly different in that figure alone from what come in March.
Yeah,
through an April consultation period.
We'll ask officers to address that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, councillors? No, thanks, Ray. Thanks for taking the time to go through that and share your thoughts. It is appreciated. Councillors, we now go on to item 4.1, the public minutes from the council meeting on the 8th of April. Councillor Hopkins.
Mayor Kircher, I think the only matter that I think those matters have been discussed, or the minutes themselves. We have on page 16 two versions, two options. Option A, the original motion moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Ryan, or the amended one, which I think is substantially different. I have tried, with your permission, to cobble them together. It's not the lyrical simplicity that I would like, but it is actually an amalgam of the two that I wonder if members would wish to consider supporting. And if I may read it out, the council endorses the draft WMMP and requests officers to incorporate in the updated draft flexible options and pathways for future implementation of the plan in the Waitaki District, taking account of discussions during these hearings and deliberations that were provided by Council's governance team in response to preferences expressed in submissions, along with possible future legislative changes. Now, I've sort of something for all the family in there, if somebody wants to second that.
Before we do that, just I have some concerns, but we'll go to the governance advisor first.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. The reason that the point 4 of your original recommendation, Councillor Hopkins, it had that council endorses the draft WMMP was removed is because that is actually part of the council decision making that was done subsequently to future meetings. So when you provide guidance at a hearing and deliberations, you do not endorse the draft because the draft has not come back to you, taking into consideration the guidance from the governance team at those hearings. So I do recommend through you, Mr. Chair, that that point comes out again as I advised you last time and you accepted my advice. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor.
Okay.
You're comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Ryan, thank you. Any speakers just wishing to
Please let's
comment
vote
that?
on it and move on.
Can you email it to me?
Okay. Right. Well, I'll put it that we adopt those minutes with that change. So those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The next 3 sets of minutes on the agenda we don't have. They'll be coming to hopefully the next meeting. So we'll go to my leadership report, mayor's report on page 20. was running out of time, so no pretty pictures in this one, sorry. And hopefully, anyway, you've had a read of that and happy to take any questions. I'm sure they all read the words as well as look at the pictures. Well, I hope. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I note your comments, somewhat frustrating comments on the district plan, and as chair of the district plan subcommittee, I can share some of those thoughts. I just I have a little concern that we have to be very circumspect what we say in the public arena, because somewhere along the line, this is also has to be viewed as a judicial process. And I'm just not too sure whether it's Councillor Hopkins or myself that are in the monkey cage, but we are endeavouring to get our ratepayers out of it.
That's probably the wisest thing I had in my whole report, and it's someone else's quote, so yeah, fair enough. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, lovely to see H.L. Mencken, who's one of the best essayists in the 20th century, actually quoted in the council report. I also think in regard to the district plan, Ambrose Bierce, who was an American satirist, had a lovely thing that might actually trip us up. He used to say, well, in his Devil's Dictionary, which was a lovely set of definitions of words, justice is the will of the judge. And some of the Environment Court decisions would certainly suggest that that's the case. But I share Councillor Thompson's view that we need to be circumspect, and in terms of some of the suggestions that have been made around the district plan review subcommittee, I think they have always been predicated on planning arguments, and at least the notion that the positions are supportable from an RMA point of view. But beyond that, the sooner there's clarity from Parliament, and the sooner we can actually therefore get in step with reconfigured parliamentary intentions, the better. I did have a question, or a couple of questions. One, with regard to your reference to citizens' assemblies, I like that idea, but it does seem to me that it is, as a proposal for engagement, something that would depend pretty much on how we select the assemblies and what topics we actually involve. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on that, or when we could actually consider that, because it does seem to me that that's pretty critical. And the other matter, I'm just wondering, with respect to NZTA and your reference on page 23 to the fact that change of focus is good, I'm just wondering if it's good enough, because you do say we have been critical often enough of NZTA and their performance, etc., etc. I do wonder, maybe a formal letter saying, well done, thank you very much. This is a good big help to rural councils and rural communities more generally. So I'm just wondering if they get the brickbats, how about a bouquet perhaps formally?
Yeah, I'm certainly happy to extend that those comments to write to the NZTA, because I know they feel frustrated too that they sometimes get given policy statements from the government that don't allow them to get on with the things that they think are priorities. And yeah, in this case, it's, I think, the focus and the subsequent indication of what the funding might be from NZTA is very positive. So very happy to write that letter to thank them for that. Deputy Mayor Halliday.
Thank you. I just want to just make a couple of comments in terms of what you had mentioned in terms of the process for the enhanced annual plan, that it hadn't measured up to the hopes of the process. I seem to remember that we actually approved the engagement plan process. And I just wanted to acknowledge the staff who have been working really hard. Behind the background, I think we do need to acknowledge that it is a challenging enhanced annual plan. There's no easy answer to it, but I just think that we do need to make sure that we do provide the support when needed. So I just wanted to kind of balance some of those comments out. That, you know, it's a challenging situation. We're doing all the best that we can, and that the support actually need the acknowledgement that they have to provide us with the information that they have. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it was the indication that, you know, tried to look at citizens' assemblies a year ago. We didn't end up with enough time to do that, and that's not certainly not putting that on staff. I think it was just the circumstances and the volume of everything else that's happening at the time. But yeah, it's, you know, it's my hope that we're able to co-design what the process will look like this year, and that we'll get, you know, we just really need that engagement with the community early on, and hopefully we can come up with a process that will fit within the time frame and get the upcoming long-term plan underway and as soon as we can, and in a way that we is our first preference. Any other comments? Someone like to receive the report? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Holding, thank you. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, that's carried. Thank you. Okay, recommendations from the Performance Audit and Risk Committee on page 29. Someone happy to move the recommendation? Deputy Mayor Halilele and Councillor Cowles, thank you. Any comments? I'll put it, those in favour say aye, and against, that is carried. Right, moving on to decision reports. So we don't have 7.1, we'll go to 7.2, the adoption of the 2024-25 enhanced annual plan.
Sure.
And just welcome the annual plan team to the chamber. And Councillor Hopkins has got a burning thing to say.
No,
No, okay. Mr. Palmley.
Thank you. Brief introduction from me. So I think as already started to be mentioned this morning, this is truly a challenging time for councils and a challenging time for many in our community too. And in terms of where we're at today, we started with what was meant to be a long-term plan process. And what was meant to be the start of building a new and better approach to engaging our communities. And we held community conversations at the start of that long-term plan process, which I think was successful, elicited a good attendance and good response from our community that has fed into this, and other work that we're doing as a council. We knew at the start of this process that many of our costs had risen significantly and many much higher than general inflation. However, with the change of government and with the change in approach to water reform, it became apparent that our costs had risen even more than what we had originally anticipated by water staying within council. And we did an estimate of, if we did nothing, what that would mean for our rates in terms of the water being kept within council, which came out at about an extra 15% on top of rates just for water alone. So it's been really challenging in that sense in terms of our escalating costs. And up until the 16th of February, we were still working under the existing legislation, planning for waters to go, because that's what we're required to do. But when that legislation was passed, we actually had a day to decide how to respond to that legislation and what we'd recommend to council, which we recommended taking the enhanced annual plan approach to give us a bit more time to actually evaluate what the impact was of the changing policy landscape on our financial position. So council agreed on the 27th of February to switch to an enhanced annual plan. I think we need to acknowledge that in getting to the point we have got to today, there's huge amounts of expenditure that have been stripped out of our budget and many items deferred. And I think the deferral of items is a worry that we need to think about after today. But this has been, a tough and far from perfect process as a result of the shifting landscape and the shift in approach that we've had to adopt. And, tough for everyone, governance and management side as we adapt to what is a big change in our environment. On top of that, we've been going through a transformation process, in particular preparing and then consulting with staff on what is the biggest change this council has seen since it was established back in 1989. And then we had the little issue of the hospital services transfer as well to be negotiating at the same time. So I think always happening at the same time has meant that, sometimes it's been fraught, sometimes there's been imperfections in this process and other things we've done. But, we're all still talking to each other, which is good, I think, mostly. So I think, we need to look at, actually we've come together as a team to work through what is a very difficult set of circumstances and a very challenging and changing policy environment. And even when we get through today, the job isn't over. And we heard from Mr. Henderson, who raises some really valid points about our cost outlook and our debt outlook going forward. And we'll have the small matter of the long-term plan to develop and work through over the coming year. And that will be extremely challenging, and we'll need to learn the lessons of the process and think about how we collectively improve that process and our approach if we're going to get through that successfully and do the best job we can for our communities. However, in the meantime, I think whilst the process has not been perfect and it's been frustrating at times for all involved, and it ends up in a result that, with a rate rise that is higher than anyone would wish for, I think we should recognise that, there's a huge amount of effort gone in by the governance team and the officers working together to try and get the best result for our district. The balance is what our communities need and expect from us, with what we can't avoid doing as well, and what we're required to do by Parliament in what is a very challenging circumstance. That's the overall context. I don't know whether, Ms. McIntosh, you want to add anything to that, or will we just open up to questions or comments? Just questions and comments, so happy to try and answer, including, I suspect, the question around debt.
Just to let you know, the form's online.
Okay. First of all, we did have the comment from Mr. Henderson, wondering, Amanda, whether you're able to respond to that one.
Yep, so I don't have the specifics down to the details, but overall debt has increased. The opening figure changed from when we set the budget earlier in the year to now. Obviously at 30 June, we're looking at having about 71 million of debt as closing at 30 June 2024. We were expecting 50 in the budget, so there's a significant change there in the opening balance that we had to deal with. So obviously that flows through to the 25 year now. And then we had a lot of perfecting the funding for various projects behind the scenes. So where reserves balances might have been depleted, it's turned to debt funding and those sorts of things. So it's just perfecting a lot of the projects exactly where they are funded.
And on the asset side, we've still got the external loans to other entities.
Yep, so they're still the same. They're still sitting at the same level we expected.
About 30 or something like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so Ray talked about at the end of the 10-year projection that goes down significantly. So about 15 mil of it is repaid in 2031 by NOIC, North Otago Irrigation.
So that's where
why.
the returns from investments decreases, is because actually some of the money's paid back.
Yeah, so it sits pretty constant until about 2031.
Thank you. It's very helpful. Ms. Farley.
Yeah, I just wanted to reinforce a point as well that was made just after Mr. Henderson spoke, which is around, we have to work to assumptions. So clearly, we're going to have to do a lot of work over the next year, both ourselves and with colleague councils around the future of water, and a huge amount of that debt is around what we're required to do on water. What's projected in there is, if we do nothing, if things stay the same, we know things can't stay the same, but we don't know what that future looks like exactly, and how will we get that cost down? But we need to get that cost down, and we need to look at how we get that balance sheet separation as well through that process. But until those things are planned out and agreed, we can't lock that into our budget assumptions. There was also a comment made around staff costs and transformation, but yeah, we haven't delivered the transformation yet. We have targets in there as to what we want to achieve in terms of operational efficiency, including around staff costs as well. But until they are locked in, we need to work with the assumptions that we've got around the projections for all of our operational costs. But I just wanted to assure that through transformation we are looking at all of our operational costs and how we live within our means and within our communities' means. That's a central objective of transformation. How do we become more effective and efficient? But until we can actually be sure that of what we're going to deliver, we can't put that into our budget assumptions at this stage.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, I was going to raise this question at the power committee meeting, but since Mr. Barnley's brought the matters that he's just brought up or raised them here, it does seem to me what you've just said is that essentially, if we look at the figures in front of us, let's say they were the equivalent of predictions by Nostradamus. Basically, what you've just said is that these figures are predicting a future and telling people about a future that we know isn't going to happen, but we're actually pretending that it is. Now, some of us went to an infrastructure symposium in Wellington, Josh and the Mayor and I, and a whole raft of things, value capture, off-balance sheet, IFF funding, a whole raft of things that relate to this new future you've talked about were discussed. Do you think it is appropriate to have some form of to have a workshop that might be open to the public or able to be observed by the public, where these issues and concepts are discussed and understood? Because I don't think a lot of us have got our heads around them. I'm certainly struggling to understand them. So is it time to put some of the stuff on the table very clearly and with professional and comprehensive advice and information?
So just picking up on a couple of other things first, I think firstly, Nostradamus isn't part of our corporate planning team, so these projections were not made by Nostradamus. But in terms of saying it's a world that isn't going to happen, I think the challenge is unless we do something about it, it's a projection of what will happen. And what I'm saying is, I think there needs to be a collective will to make sure that that is not what happens. But unless there are decisions made around this table, in the near future, that is what will happen. But possibly, the problem will get worse as we continue to see costs escalated. I think, clearly we need to engage the community on this. We will, be developing a long-term plan, and alongside that, we'll need to develop a water services delivery plan that needs to set out the future of water. And I think those are key things where we'll need a lot of engagement with our community and a lot of information around what the world is looking like for councils and communities going forward to get that understanding. I think, the issue of citizens panels was mentioned. I think some of these topics are ripe for citizens panels, particularly the future of water. I think that's something that, we could very much engage a citizens panel in helping us shape what that looks like. Although clearly not all of it, the options are totally within our own hands, because some of the options involve us working with other councils, and we need to help generate an environment where there's a will from all to work together to find some of these solutions, because doing it on our own, I don't think will provide a result that is satisfactory or affordable for our community.
So I just note, obviously, transformation and some of the comments that have been made by councillors around cutting back on consultants is the reason why Nostradamus isn't around the table. But I want that to be noted. Thank you. Councillor Blackler.
Thank you, Mayor Kuchar. Just going back to the question around the four debt projections. I'm just trying to understand if in the PAR report we see there's projected 15 mil of carry forward projects, but we're landing 20 mil over in total debt from 50 landing at 71. So we're underspending in CapEx, but landing over in debt. So I was just wondering if you could just highlight the few key items there, and then my second kind of part to that is you mentioned the rejigging of classifications from reserve funding to debt funding, or debt funded. My question on that one is, if the reserves were already overdrawn, wouldn't the debt projections in the draft plan that went out for consultation have flowed through in terms of the total debt forecasting already?
So the difference for CapEx versus debt is mainly because the big projects that we're deferring until 2025 have external funding. So the Sports and Event Centre, half of that is external funding, and the Forester Gallery is the other big one. So it's not reliant on debt, it's not fully funded by debt. So that's where there's a bit of a disconnect between the carry forwards and the debt levels. And then in terms of the reserves, it's just a lot of the times where we will pull from reserves for a few different projects and that sort of thing. And I guess perfecting them all behind the scenes. So like we had a whole lot of projects that we went through line by line and said where they were funded from, put that out, and then we've been perfecting behind the scenes, working out exactly what funds are left over, where they can come from and all that sort of thing. So when you put it all together and finalise the budgets a bit more as we go through, it's all kind of come out in the wash.
So thank you for that. So just supplementary to that, just to confirm so there's maybe in the earlier stage projections around capital projects, the assumption was there might be some reserve funds available to fund project X, but it's come to light that it will now need to be debt funded to achieve it. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Councillor Cowles. Oh, okay. Councillor Hopkins.
Look, I've got some detailed questions. And also I foreshadow that I intend to move a alternative motion regarding the fees and charges. But just apropos of the some of the specifics in the document, on page 40, on page 39, I should say, there's a reference to under 73 Oamaru Whitestone Civic Trust initiate a study into economic social benefits of OWCT. And the 3-word description there is refer tourism Waitaki. There is another reference later on to that being funded from reserves, that 45,000. And I don't think we actually voted to do that. I thought that the agreement was that we would seek either funding from TW or possibly incorporate that study with the better off funding in the CBD area. The other questions I have on the next page, page 40, and 41 actually, there's a reference in Duntroon to the curb and channel estimate of 10K not progressed. Now, my recollection is that we did say that we were going to do that because what was being put at risk by the water flowing down the street was a listed heritage building, the blacksmith's shed. And the other question I had with regard to the footpath near the Kurail Bridge, have we established that NZTA are willing to assist with that? Do we have consent for either the curb and channel or the walkway with bollards? Equally, at the bottom of that page, there's a reference to a 500,000 loan funding for the Puketapu track. My understanding is again that we agreed to actually commit 200,000, but no more. So I'm wondering whether that 500,000 should remain in the budgets. And finally, oh yes, on page 41, I should say, the study into the benefits of OWCT is identified as coming from reserves, which contradicts the information on page 39. And also on that page, there's this curbside collection implementation 410K loan funded. I thought we'd actually parked that and taken that out.
Thank you. I'll go to Mandy and hopefully you've written all those down.
Hopefully I have. So thank you very much, Councillor Hopkins, for that. So the attachment to page 39 with the reference is regarding the the changes that were confirmed. So the change proposed for the IWCT was initially to be discussed with Tourism Waitaki. We hadn't agreed to progress it at that stage through council. So then at the next meeting, it was then confirmed to be funded through reserves, because initially when the first stage, when council discussed it, they weren't going to progress that $45,000 activity, and it was referred to Tourism Waitaki. The mayor was discussed to take that to Tourism Waitaki at that stage. And then at the 11th June key directions meeting, it was determined that we would include that and fund that from reserves. So hopefully that covers that one. With the next two questions that you raised with regard to item 61, the Duntrina District Development Association, the improved drainage on Orr Street. The option there was to progress the 15 metres AC bund with the estimated cost at 2K to minimise that, which was one option that was put forward. They were two separate options of how to manage that issue. And there was a more expensive option at the 10,000, but they felt that they could do what was required with that lower funding of $2,000. And likewise for the Ahuriri Community Board, on that one there, again, there was two options put forward. So it was agreed to progress with the bollards, but no, with regard to has NZTA confirmed that we can do it, because we need to get their approval before we progress that. We haven't got that confirmation at this stage. So that will be something that officers will get, of course, before they progress that activity. There was the other item there that you raised regarding Puketapu track. That was discussed quite a lot at the last key directions meeting, and it landed to keep that in until such time as a decision was made around whether that activity, because there's a lot of grant funding to be funded by the community there as well. So it was agreed to keep it in rather than take that out at this stage. So that left that item in there as well. Has that covered all of your questions there, Councillor Hopkins?
Your recollection of the decision regarding the OWCT study, being funded from reserve, just remind that might be a matter of other councils. Sorry, I haven't had my microphone on. Your recollection regarding the funding source for the OWCT study differs from mine, but that might be a matter that other councillors can express a view on. The last question I had related to the curbside collection implementation and the $410,000 loan funding. Now, in my view, we've subsequently agreed to do a business study looking at all the options. And I would have thought that it's premature to actually have this listed in the in our annual plan as a line item when we don't even have the result of the business plan available for our contemplation and consideration. So to me, I thought we'd taken it out, but other councillors their recollection may differ.
So we did discuss that last time, and you put forward that view, and I expressed the same thing again. This is not a decision to go ahead with the curbside collection. It's a budget allocation that enables you to have the provision there, should you at a future date, having had that business case, decide to go ahead with that. So it's just a budget provision that's subject to that business case coming back.
Okay, I'm just wondering then, Mr. Henderson has come today and he's looked at a whole lot of figures, and a layperson looking at this document in front of us would infer, I think, that this is money that is committed to be spent. And what you just said, and I accept the point you've made, you are correct, you refresh my memory. But can we not qualify some of this information, like subject to future decisions regarding collection? Can we not indicate that this is conditional money, not actual money, if you see what I mean?
I think it's about understanding where we're at in the process. We're setting a budget. We're not agreeing, individual projects. You're setting a budget today. So these are budget allocations that enable, future decisions to be made.
Councillor Thompson.
In terms of the Puketapu track, it's similar to the discussion that we've just had, that if the Puketapu Trust can secure support and funding and there's a shortfall, we need the ability to actually make it happen, but we're not actually going out and saying, well, here's 500K, go to it.
Yeah, I think probably that's good to make sure they're clear on that. Because we've certainly had that in other situations where we've allocated funding and, ahead of time and communities have taken that as gospel. So it's making sure that they know that they've got a big job still to do. Councillor Cowles.
Thank you, Mayor Kuchar. I find it's often, we sit here talking about our long-term plans and our annual plans and budgets. And I guess if we talk about the layman, not everyone's in that business frame of mind or those sorts of things. And I do feel we've spoken about this in the past of running it past the check of a 15-year-old boy, will he understand it type thing. And I'm not saying that we need to dumb things down in any way. Please don't take it that way. Simplifying it and speaking in a term that people do understand that we're not necessarily spending this money, that we are allowing, an allocation should we be looking at these things and should they move and progress forward. I just feel that might reduce some of the angst that sometimes we get back when people look at these figures and see things. So I think it's really more of a comms communication style of thing. But, I was thinking earlier, when we look at these worst case scenarios, I applaud you for putting them in there because it does look grim. And we have to be straight up. If we keep doing what we're doing, this is what we're going to get. And, we're going to have to change some stuff along the way. So just my 2 points. Thank you.
Thank you. Just got a couple of comments to make myself. Just on attachment 2, there was the neighbourhood support signs on power poles. Just to inform you, they have had a discussion with the CE of Network Waitaki, and he invited me to get the coordinator for the neighbourhood support to get in touch with him, and hopefully that will get that particular project sorted. Just on the fees and charges, we did have a wee bit of feedback on some of the birthing costs, and I just looking at them and trying to look at incentives and how we can help us make more money. I think there's the reference to double birthing on Holmes Wharf. That I think it would be helpful to have if we can get 2 boats in the space of one, essentially. It does come at a cost of some space, but it doesn't take any more wharf space as such. But I wonder whether we can perhaps look at a discounted rate for the second boat that might be berthed alongside the one that's tied to the wharf. It's not obviously an easy thing operationally to manage. It's probably best for if someone owns both boats or has a very good relationship with the other person involved. But I just question whether there's a possibility of changing that one.
Thank you, Mayor Kuchar. I just did have some feedback that was brought to the meeting on the 20th of May. We didn't discuss it, but the comment there, what was the justification for proposing the increase of the double berthing rates in the Omaruma Harbour? The response from officers there was the inflationary allowance of $11.80 per day is the total for both vessels as a single entity berth order. I'm not sure if that clarifies it or that was just the information I received back.
No.
No.
Because looking at it as in permanent berthing, looking at the costs, so $2,825 for a non-resident, $2,355 for a resident. Looking at double berthing as being something that can apply, those fees can apply to, but maybe at 90% of that cost for the second boat. Because we can, it does take up a bit more space in the harbour, and I know, there's other boats and so on moving around, and there's less room. So, I don't think, as some have indicated, that it should be you get the second one free. They still need to pay something for the privilege of being in the harbour, and I'm just suggesting that. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, I have a more fundamental question with the whole fees and charges section of this, and I would note to other members that there are changes in fees and charges on pages 42, 44, 46, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 63 and 64, including some that are unfathomable in my mind. I just wanted to ask officers, when have these been discussed in the process of actually formulating the annual plan? At what meeting were the fees and charges discussed?
Sorry, councillor Hobson, I don't have that specific date with me, but they have been brought to an earlier meeting. This is not the first time they've been brought.
Again, sorry, I beg to differ. I have no recollection of these being considered by us at all. And as I indicated before, I foreshadowed that I intend to move an alternative resolution to the one that's in the agenda. And that resolution would be that council holds fees and charges for the 2024-25 year at current levels until they have been reviewed and modified by resolution. Because in fact, we haven't discussed them, we haven't considered them. And we've had submitters who have actually threatened to take us to court if we actually tamper unduly, in their view, with the harbour fees and charges. And in my view, these are matters that we need to give more consideration to before adaptation. Supplementary to that, if I may, can officers explain how a raft of fees increases, all of which are identified as being as a result of inflation, actually vary in very considerable amounts, both in terms of percentages and total dollar sums? Now, if we have an inflationary increase, surely it should be and would be consistent across the board in every instance.
Just look for any officer comment on that. My understanding was that these were part of what the information that was part of the annual plan engagement. Hence, we actually got feedback on some aspects of it.
As I say, if you don't agree the fees and charges bit today, then I don't think you have a balanced budget. And we'd need to go through and work out what we're not going to do, what we're not going to deliver, because that money that's proposed for those fees and charges funds, the services, and we've got a big hole in the budget then. And, I don't think we'd be able to recommend it to you, but I'm looking to our Chief Financial Officer to give some advice on that.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on the inflationary increases. Like, obviously, they're not just going to increase with inflation. So they reflect the cost of doing the project. So there might be significant, we've consulted on 27% increase in roads. So the inflationary increase is massive there. So they're not all consistent. You're not going to get a 3% flat line increase across all your fees and charges. They reflect the cost of doing those, being able to provide that service. So the fees have been increased, necessary to cover our costs. So if we don't accept that increase in fees, then we'll have to balance the budget in another way, probably rates or debt.
Councillor Cowles.
Yeah, look, I do recall so that we did ask that when we, in a previous meeting, when we look at our fees, that we are annually looking at that CPI and adjusting them accordingly. So, I mean, it is something that we've asked to be done, and it's good to see that in there. So, I mean, we have to make sure that we don't get into a situation where we don't adjust them for 10 years and suddenly there's a massive increase. We have to be tweaking them annually. There is a massive increase in costs and overheads across the board. So, I sit relatively comfortable after I had some questions initially, and then I sort of reflected on it and looked at it and went, we have to fund things. We're in tough times. And in my mind, I think I'm quite comfortable with where things are sitting.
Councillor Percival, apologies.
I align myself with Councillor Hopkins in the fact that I can't really recollect discussing a lot of these prices. I was quite comfortable going through the list until I got to page 64. And under water supply, the connection, 20 mil connection standard, 20 mil on demand or metered on demand, an increase of close to excuse me, to 40%, which equates to $1,000 on each of the two different connections. And the justification for that is actual costs associated with connection, allowing for inflation. Well, hardy ha, that cost has already been questioned by so many consumers at this point to what it is standing at the moment. How on earth can there be a justification for $1,000 on top of the 2,700 of both at this time?
What's the comment on that?
All I can add to that is when we discussed this with the Waters team, when they put that price increase up, is they have not put an increase on that particular fee for a number of years. So they haven't had any inflation added to that particular fee for years. They've not done any review on that particular line item. So they did feel it was appropriate to do that to reflect the true costs of actually putting that there. But that's all I can add to that of any value.
No, thank you, Mandy. That's great. But can I just inform people around the table that to get a connection on a rural scheme off Hamneck, 1 point would cost you in excess of $16,000. So no wonder the farming community is going down the drain because we can't afford the water. Just a point of interest for those areas it may be.
Thank you. And Mr. Rendell, you've got a comment to make.
Yeah, good morning. Just a further point of note to Mandy's comment there. We have had contractual increases in excess of 30% on a lot of our water infrastructure work. This probably represents how much work we've done to actually try to keep the rates low, because prices have moved significantly in the roading and water space. And unfortunately, as Mandy said, we haven't kept up to rate, up to the cost of inflation in previous years, hence the significant move this time. However, this actually represents the actual cost that it is for a contractor to go and do the work. We're not banking additional monies on this. This is actually what it costs, which is of concern. But this is the situation the council's in.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Councillor. I sense there may not be an appetite around the table to support the alternative fees and charges resolution that I'd suggested, but I would like to ask.
Not a resolution.
No, I know, what recommendation, whatever. I'd like to ask officers, have we, two or three, certainly two, apparently very informed submitters produced very detailed submissions regarding harbour fees and charges. I think both of them threatened or suggested that our amended or proposed charges could be subject to court or other legal challenge. Have we received any legal advice on the validity of those potential legal challenges? And are we satisfied at this point that our proposed positions are legally tenable?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We have received advice regarding the charging of those fees, and the advice that we have received is that we are able to charge those. I have had discussions with those people who have made those submissions, and obviously they're of a different opinion, and as is the want of a lot of legislation, two lawyers can have different opinions about the same matters. As far as our position, if it were to be challenged, I can't comment on it because that's for a court of law to decide. However, we have had advice to that effect that we can charge them.
Thank you very much. That's helpful. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I share a similar position to Councillor Cowles. I recollect that this information coming before us previously, and I actually question the value of us going through this line by line. We have to be realistic that inflation is moving in different spheres in different amounts. And I commend staff for the work that they've put in, and I would encourage that we move the conversation along so that we can deal with other issues.
Yeah, I have been allowing a little extra time because we haven't gone through this in a lot of detail. It has been there, but it's not a part that we have gone through. And obviously there's been some questions asked today, which I think have been helpfully answered. So that's been good. But yeah, we'll take a little bit more time. We need to get moving through the rest of the agenda. Councillor McCone. Oh, sorry. Okay, you're just waving. Any other comments? Oh, sorry.
No, just very quickly, I'm in support of councillor Cowles and councillor Jim Thompson. I think I recall like us going through this, like previously, insofar as the harbour fees. I think if you can afford 2 boats, you can afford to pay those fees there. So I think that's where I stand. I'm supportive of just this moving forward. We've got lots of other things we need to talk about.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Councillor Blackler, thank you.
Mayor Couch, is it okay at this time if I ask a question regarding the enhanced plan document, the specific document?
Yes.
Yeah. I just, page 120, the rates examples. I was just wondering if we might be able to, just pick out some of the outliers and just offer a brief summary of what some of the dynamics are that might contribute to that. It's probably a question that members of the community might have. For example, in Palmerston, the commercial property rate is increasing 37%, and it appears to be in relation to the other targeted rates. I appreciate it's probably partly to do with the total number of buildings possibly, generate swings and roundabouts, but and then conversely the Oamaru commercial property rates is a reduction in 12%. Bearing in mind these are just average examples, but and then if we go to the agricultural properties, we're seeing decreases or very minor increases in comparison to residential counterparts. So I was just wondering if we could talk to some of it. Like obviously we in this room kind of know what some of those dynamics are that are contributing to that, but just for the interest of the public, if we could kind of talk to them.
Thank you.
Sorry, just to confirm, are you wanting that in the document, or are you wanting that here, that discussion, or are you wanting that like an press release to support that? I'm just trying to clarify.
It could be a communications document that supported it, or just a brief conversation about it now. Yeah, I'm happy either way.
Yeah. Unfortunately, as much as I do have the rate schedules sent to me from NWales, I don't understand them. That's not my area. So there's a lot of numbers. It's a massive big spreadsheet. So I can't really inform you on what has impacted those. I know that definitely the Mayor and I did speak earlier and look at some of those rate schedules very high level, and definitely where there's been new activity on like water treatment plants and things like that, that's impacted some of those rate changes in some of those areas. But the specific details I wouldn't have the ability to go into. But Paul might be there. That's wonderful.
Okay, I'll let you. Paul, can you make comment? Thanks.
Yeah, the biggest reason, sorry, not turning the camera on, but the biggest reason that you're seeing those quite different movements, particularly in the commercial sector, is the impact of the revaluation that was undertaken during the year. So when quotable value came and talked to council, they noted that Palmerston had moved quite significantly, whereas the agricultural properties and the commercial properties in and around Oamaru had seen far less of an overall increase in their values. So that's the main thing that's rolling through and causing the pretty significant differences in movements in those areas.
Thank you. I do have some specific questions on some of the aspects, but it's probably in the next item rather than this one. It's reflected in the document, but I'll ask it in the next one. Councillor Blackman.
Just supplementary on Mr. Hope's commentary, brief commentary there on the matters at hand. So what you're saying, Mr. Hope, is because the property values in Palmerston have risen disproportionately to other areas, the proportionate share of the rates contribution going to that area, or the lift in that, has resulted in the overall higher increase in that space compared to other areas. I'm just, the reason I'm asking this question is people assert that a lift in property values equals a lift in rates, and I just would ask that you kind of make the distinction around what's driving it.
There's a new motel in Palmerston with multiple bathrooms, so that's increased the rates take there. That's a specific for Palmerston. So it's like situations like that.
Paul, did you have something to add?
No, just Councillor Blackler was correct. I mean, it's if your rates move more than the average, then you pay slightly more than you were in the past, and if your value moves less than the average, then you get a bit of a win. So I mean, that's really just reflecting the nature of the values that were assessed by quotable value, and probably think something that most people sort of aware of, but this is really highlighting it.
Thank you. And yeah, it's certainly that percentage change being significantly more than percentage of the overall average. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, I presume if we have typos, we just take them to you, Mandy. Okay. I have a couple of questions on page 20 of the document. The headline says adopting to change or adapting to change. Going forward, we know that further rate increases like the one we're facing this year are undesirable. I think that word is probably a bit understated, and I would have preferred that we say something honest like unacceptable, or something of that nature, which I think underscores our concerns about them, and also the community's concern as expressed today by at least one person, i.e. Mr. Henderson, in his submission at the forum. Also on page 34, New Oamaru Whitestone Civic Trust Economic Study, funding source this time is identified as loans, whereas previously either we were going to go to Tourism Waitaki or funded out of reserves. That's the description on page 41 of our council agenda meeting document. So I think that needs to be clarified, and there needs to be a consistent explanation as to where that money's coming from. A couple of other questions, but I'll leave it at those two for the moment.
So I'll just come in on the undesirable word, because myself and Mandy actually discussed that word, and I think it might have been unacceptable at the start or something to that. But the truth is that the projections are that that's what the rate rises will be or more, unless we do something about it. So they're undesirable, but they're unavoidable unless we make make some decisions around this table to do some things differently over the next year.
Can we just settle on far from desirable?
Based on the fact that Mr. Palmley has said that this isn't just a matter of semantics, it was an issue that he and Mandy discussed. And I get the logic of the word that's been finally selected. No word would be perfect, but given the explanation now made in public as to why it is that word, I'm happy.
I'd just like to also thank you for the things we have identified, Councillor Hopkins. I look forward to getting that list from you later. There is actually, just on page 21, I just want to identify we've done some further proofreading since that was uploaded. And on page 21, there are actually four figures that are incorrect. So just on the heritage, environment and regulation, it states 8%, it's actually 7%. And these are just numbers that have sort of been tidied since we did that. The district leadership changes from 12% to 11%, and infrastructure services changes from 65 to 67%, and 77.8 million was incorrect. It was actually 85.8 million. So we just wanted to clarify that as well. Most of the changes that officers have found are largely formatting of bullet points that we didn't like on a reread. But there's a few grammatical things that we've also found. So we'll get together with you after this, when there's an opportunity, Councillor Hopkins, and then present those back to the Mayor and CE for their approval. So thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, a bit of sign language going on here. Sorted? Excellent. Okay. Councillor McCone and then Councillor Blakely.
Look, I just have a question for Mr. Hope. On the general rate, the rate set is 0.072. Is that the same as last year?
I would strongly doubt it. Sorry, I don't have a comparison, but no, the rates are recalculated every year based and given the changes in values, that value would certainly have changed.
Okay. And I think yeah, what it is a certain amount that needs to be raised. I guess the main question is the amount being raised changed, because that's what people are actually paying. The percentage will change because just because of property values changing. So the number could stay the same, but the percentage might change just because of that. So it's which figure is the most relevant to look at to see the impact. Councillor Blakely.
Thank you, Mayor Kircher. I just had a question about a couple of questions about the detail in the document, what we're seeing there. Page 24, the essential services benchmark, the decrease from 334% down to 218%. Comparing the 21-31 LTP through to with the enhanced annual plan. I was just wondering, is that so that's basically an indication of the works that had been planned to be undertaken before the handover to three waters, which has now been taken out or deferred, or further on down the track with the change in position from government. Just to kind of understand what that's representing. And on page 72, in the disclosure statement document, there's the rates affordability benchmark. Projected rate increases will not exceed the projected local government cost index plus 2%. So that's suggesting that the rates increase should be no greater than 6.3%. I'm just given that we have had quite a focus on needs versus wants. I'm just wondering why we still land so much different from that benchmark figure. It's probably to do with our geographic nature and sparse population as an example, but just wondering if you could speak to that.
We don't know how to say no.
And then finally, my third question was just on page page 107 on the reserve funds. Under the I think I'm right in saying under the trust reserves, is that inclusive of the RMA reserve fund? So I'm just wondering why the projected balance at June 2025 still at 2.95, given that my vague recollection is that will be in deficit at some stage, but maybe that's a future timing thing, in and around projects out of that fund, along with the possible potential funds coming from that towards the sport and event centre.
So yeah, in general, the benchmarks, have changed significantly from the long-term plan projections because of everything that's happened in waters. The standards have changed so drastically. You can see our debt projections, our capital expenditure is just through the roof. In fact, like the inflation, everything has just massively changed our benchmarks there. Yeah, and obviously the size of our geographic location versus the population affects our benchmarks as well. So the cost is borne by less ratepayers. Yeah, so does that cover everything about the benchmarks questions? Yeah, and as far as the reserve, RMA reserve, so that will just be a timing thing as well. So obviously the Sports and Events Centre is a long-term project. It's not just all happening in 2025. Yeah, so that'll be reduced in following years. Yeah.
Okay, councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, sorry, look, I just want to get final clarification and maybe also from my colleagues. Am I right in assuming that we hadn't resolved that to fund the Civic Trust benefit study from, or am I right in assuming that we had decided to spend that 45,000 in reserves? Or had we decided to loan fund it? Or had we decided that we were going to look at using some of the better off funding for the CBD development for that particular project? My recollection is it's the latter. But is it reserve funded or is it loan funded or is it to be funded from another source?
Yes. We'll go to officers for a more detailed response, perhaps.
The direction was that it would have no rates impact that funding. So the actual, and I know that last week or at the previous meeting, it was suggested that it would be something that could be appropriately funded from better off funding, but we will have to clarify once after this meeting. And Mr. Wells isn't here with us today, so we'll clarify that funding line and get that corrected. But it was definitely discussed on how we could fund it. Definitely to proceed with that activity was agreed by council at the 11th of June. Key directions meeting, and how it would be actually funded, I think was yet to be confirmed at that point because there was discussion around the better off, the reserves or loan funding, and depending on where that's at. So we'll come back and finalise that for that document.
But the document, the enhanced annual plan document on page 34 will need to be changed.
Thank you. So that will be clarified and sorted. So with that, I'm happy to move the recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Hale-Daly. Any comments? Councillor Hopkins.
I would like to move an amendment to 3. I would like to move the council holds fees and charges for 2024-25 at current levels until they have been reviewed and modified by resolution.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder on that? Lapses for want of a seconder. So the substantive motion stands. So any further comments? I'll put it, those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against?
No.
That's carried. Thank you very much. And yeah, we'd like to, it's time we had broke for morning tea. I've got a timetable, so it's 10:15 for that. So we'll have a break and then we'll come back in, what's the time going to be, 10:30? And recommence the meeting at that stage. Thank you very much.
All right, chief
Right, well, welcome back. As we reconvene this council meeting. Just going to go to item 7.7 now, the council controlled organisations final statements of intent. That's on page 170 of your agenda. Apology, I didn't know what the timing was for these until just before our break. So we've got first up Marama Airfield Limited, and we've got the chair, Clive Geddes, here with us. So welcome, Clive. Good to see you again, and thanks for making the trip to Oamaru.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Worship, councillors and members of the executive. At the risk of going ditto repeat, there are not significant changes to our statement of intent from previous years. And I'm sure that you all appreciate that our business model is A, very small, and B, constrained in what it can and cannot do. So we have provided for you the statement of intent that is before you, and we have received the council's letter of shareholder expectation and provided a response to that. And Your Worship, that there may be some questions that arise from that response that I'm very happy to answer, or to answer any queries that arise from the statement of intent itself.
Thank you, Clive. Councillors, any questions or comments? Councillor Hopkins?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just struggling to find the specifics of this, but the original report indicated that your board, Mr. Geddes, had actually sought a couple of modifications to the, I think it was the statement of intent or the letter from us. Specifically, you are seeking, you asked us to remove the references to the lorry block, and also the reference to maximising the benefit to the ratepayer on the airfield. I had a look through the statement of intent, and it did seem to me that those weren't in there, although they did appear, they did surface in the letter from us. So I'm just wondering whether you are satisfied with the letter that appears in the agenda today, or whether you want amendments to that and or the statement of intent in line with the request for certain things to be removed or modified.
So the statement of intent is for the boards to determine what exactly isn't in there. The letters of expectation just set out our expectations, and obviously generally boards try and reflect those things in their statement of intent. But Clive, do you want to make a comment?
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Hopkins, you are correct. References to the lorry block purchase and maximising the benefit for ratepayer and airfield do not appear in the statement of intent, but we don't think that it is useful for it to be raised in the letter of expectation for the following reasons. Firstly, the lorry block purchase and development was a matter entirely in the control of council, and was not, and the Marama Airfield Company and its directors were not a party to that. So that is very much a matter, I think, that sits within council's concerns in relation to the airfield, and not something that it's appropriate for the airfield to recognise or even address, because it raises the issue of what shareholders do what. So we appreciate that the council spent significant time and money in putting in place designations, air noise boundaries, and other district plan provisions that protect the interests of the airfield. And that is the contribution that council as a shareholder can make. The other shareholder, the Marama Storing Centre, at the same time has built an irrigation system, 3 hangars, converted a hangar to a terminal. And that's a contribution that they can make, but we don't see that is something that needs to be specifically recognised. And we put council's role as the manager of statutory processes into that box. The second issue, the benefit of the landholder to the ratepayer in the airfield. It may be an expectation of council, but we, under the Local Government Act and under the Companies Act, have a very clear and distinct responsibility, primarily to the company and secondly to the shareholders. So we don't think that that is entirely relevant. The one thing that's not raised in the letter of expectation, Your Worship, that we have had informal discussions about is when will the company be in a position to pay a dividend to both shareholders? And that is something that we see being progressed in the next 12-month period as the sales of the property that we have developed increase, and we are in a position to estimate when the company will have a working investment reserve and be in a position to return a dividend to its shareholders. And we're very, very comfortable with that responsibility. We've discussed that at board level, and we think that is appropriate when the company is in the financial shape to be able to deliver a dividend.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, if we can deal with the letter of intent, then just as part of the package while Mr. Geddes is here.
The letter of expectation.
Letter of expectation, I should say. So
you can refer to it. We won't deal with it.
Well, what I'm trying to establish is the board has asked for 2 things to be removed. When I read the letter, the only references to the 2 things that do concern the board are as follows. In the last letter, councillor shareholder emphasised 3 matters under this heading: business plan to achieve, debt council still holds in relation to the Laurie block, maximise the benefit of the land holding to ratepayer. Now, so in other words, the references to those 2 things are historic. They refer to what was emphasised in the last letter. That what follows indicates that things have moved on, and it at least implies that the council isn't dwelling on or obsessing as concerned about those things as it was previously. So I'm just wondering if what, if any, alteration to wording the board might want or ask for in the letter of expectation.
Your Worship, I don't want to be in a position of telling council its business, but what we are wanting to do is move forward. And it is the view of the entire board that continuing reference to historical matters in regards to council in its letter of expectation is no longer appropriate. Without being cynical, one director suggested that we should ask for this on the basis that it would avoid me coming along here and everyone smiling and me walking out the door 15 minutes later. At least we could have a debate. However, I'll come back to what we are trying to do is move the company forward from here, and the historical contribution of both shareholders is something that is reflected in the airfield itself today. And in my view, and the view of the board, does not need repeated reference in the letter of expectation.
Thank you. I think fundamentally this is an issue for the 2 shareholders to have their discussion about. It's difficult for the board to be in a position of trying to favour one over the other. It's not necessarily their role to do that. So take your point, Clive, and thank you for that. And we'll still smile nicely as you leave. Don't worry about that. You're doing a great job, and you and the board are, as always, getting on and doing things, making a really positive difference to the Amarama community, and obviously as directors, being unpaid, doing that for free. So thank you for that. Councillors, any other comments? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Clive. Appreciate you coming and taking the time.
Thank you, Your Worship. Excuse me. It would be worthwhile, I think, just recording that we had a very useful meeting last year for the first time, or earlier this year, with both shareholders. And that is a matter that the board has asked me to identify again to you, Your Worship, that would be very useful to schedule another meeting with both shareholders in the next 3 to 4 months period.
Yeah, no, we'll get that done. Absolutely. It was beneficial having that initial chat, and yeah, it's, you know, we share a significant asset in Amarama there, and it'd be good to actually be working closer together with the other shareholders. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Right. Councillors, next we've got the Whitestone contracting, I think it is. Sorry, tourism Waitaki. No, Whitestone contracting. Yep. Get my list in order here. So we've got Craig Wyatt online. So just Craig, is it?
Yep.
Yeah. So welcome, Craig. Thank you very much for zooming in on this one. Happy to hand straight to you to take it from here.
Yeah, just come through.
Okay. Right. So we've also got Paul Bissett just arriving, and Tony Reid. So got the operational arm well represented in the chamber, and Craig Wyatt online. So Craig, can you hear me?
Thank you. I'm unmuted now, so yes, I can hear you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Thank you. So, Craig, do you want to introduce the statement of intent? Is that how we're organised things today?
Yes, indeed. And I'm having a few technical issues in getting a video up because it won't let me do it. I'm sorry.
Okay, now we can see you.
There we go. Thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk about our letter of intent for the year. It follows the path of our ones in previous years, but also this year aligning to the objectives of our council shareholder around a prosperous district, strong communities, quality services, and a valued environment. And I suppose that's further taken out in our submission and our letter, with effectively looking at maximising the use of local businesses in our supply chains, providing cadetship and apprenticeship opportunities and employment and training opportunities, workforce development, a health and safety plan and culture that targets zero accidents, and also looking at our corporate social responsibility in terms of the Waitaki community and the other communities that we actually operate within. So I'm not sure if there's any questions around some of those bits and pieces. There was in the letter of expectation some comments that we made back around the level of the work that between WDC and Whitestone Contracting. I think at the moment we're quite comfortable where that is, and I think if it starts to get out of a line, then we need to have some different types of discussions with our council shareholder around that. Perhaps also I can just comment on the profitability this year that we are experiencing. We had quite a turnaround in really our project management and our jobs and our margins, and Whitestone Contracting is on task to have a pretty substantially better year than it has in the past few. And whilst this year is 1 year, we know that next year is going to be a lot more competitive around the tender box, because we've got a lot of other people who are interested in tendering for any of the projects that are going to come out with the all of the councils throughout the South Island. But also there's a lot more people out there chasing the work that was previously around. So we are well aware of that. But this year we are looking at having a more financially robust balance sheet for the council.
Thank you. And yeah, very encouraging the turnaround that's happened in the last 6 months in particular. And well done to board and management and all the staff of Whitestone for achieving the what looks to be a very good result for the year. Paul, did you have anything you want to add at this stage? We'll just go to questions, comments. Okay, councillors, anyone got any comments they want to make? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I joined the Mayor and the CE on a call with NZTA some weeks ago, and they intimated that they will be looking to try and distribute work to tier 2 and 3 contractors rather than the current system. With your experience building the dam at Mahino, are you confident that you will be able to operate in that space if it becomes available?
Just note that it's not legally a dam. That brings a lot of other requirements around certification and so forth. So,
sorry, the lifting of the road.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Paul.
Good morning. Yes, and it is good news for the business to be more directly engaged with NZTA. We are doing a lot of work now for NZTA, but through a tier 1. So it'll be good to get more engagement with NZTA directly on the works we're doing, but also to get more of those opportunities that used to be there with the old system, with the maintenance. And we do also build dams, which we're quite good at. So if anyone wants a dam built, thank you.
Nice. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, I just have a same question to the company and to the board that I put to Mr. Geddes regarding Omarama. You said you referenced a letter of expectation, and you said that setting a desired percentage of work from council is not relevant. I won't read it all, but you asked that to be removed. You also asked for the specific reference to Cameron's Pit to be removed. I found the specific reference to Cameron's Pit in our letter of expectation. I can't see any reference to this setting a desired percentage of work. So have you seen the letter of expectation, and are you happy with it, or are there further changes you would like based on the requests you've made?
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. We have seen the draft letter of expectation, and those are the changes that we requested. Just around the percentage, we were reluctant to put a percentage of that. This is the cutoff that we want to work with the client. It's with any client like NZTA, as we just talked about. If we have 50% of our work with NZTA, it's a risk to our business, and we need to manage that. So it's the percentage is just something we manage, and it's just about relationship. The other question was, Jim? Oh, the Cameron's Pit, sorry. The Cameron's Pit was really around the overall strategy for the quarry that we're working on, and that's a long-term project. It's not a quick fix. So we are working on that, but it's, yeah, like I said, it's a long-term strategy, and we will be giving an update at the next shareholder meeting in August.
Thank you. Just a question from me in reference to what Councillor Thompson mentioned with the meeting we had with NZTA's regional person. One of the things that the government is looking at is how do they reduce some of the challenges of traffic management whilst still keeping people safe. And he indicated that they are looking at much more of a risk-based assessment of how to manage traffic in any particular area, rather than a fairly prescriptive style that it's there at the moment. From your experience, do you think that will be beneficial to Whitestone and the costs that you have to put in for managing traffic, if you can take that more measured approach?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. sort of two edges to that, to answers to that question. We've actually got a growing traffic management business, which is adding to our bottom line quite nicely. So without taking anything away from that, I think traffic management does need some work. My understanding is it is already at a risk-based approach to it. And I think there's probably more questions around how NZTA procure traffic management and ensure that the risk is in the right place rather than the way it is at the moment.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Hopkins?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just can't see any reference in the letter of shareholder expectation to a specific percentage of work provided by us to the company. So if somebody could, if I'm missing it, I apologise. If that can be signalled or identified, I'd be grateful. The other thing is, if there's a typo, and there is, who do I advise of that? You, okay. Thank you, right.
Okay, anyone else? I think that's everything. So, Craig, to you and your fellow board members, thank you very much for the work you've done over this past 12 months, and we look forward to the annual report coming through in due course. And Paul and your team, thank you very much as well. It's been a challenging time in your industry, and obviously facing a lot of inflation pressures and so forth. That we certainly feel the brunt of those as well. And just appreciate the difficulty in a tender environment to be able to actually know what price you are going to be putting in for and still cover those challenges of can you keep prices where you've tendered them at. So I imagine it can't be easy at all. So thank you very much for what you're doing.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Sorry. Thanks, Kate. And thanks, Paul. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for joining us, Craig.
Thanks.
Okay, next we've got Tourism Waitaki and McElhinney and Dr. Philippa Agnew. So welcome along. And when you're ready, put the microphone on. The floor is yours. No, just press it. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
That's the one.
You can hark back to my radio days then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good morning. I suppose let's just go to the business at hand, and we've got the SOI that in front of you. Is there any questions that we can answer around that at all?
Okay, straight to questions, councillors. Councillor Hopkins. Thank you.
Just again, I just want to be clear. You've asked for a slight amendment to our letter of shareholder expectation. Am I right in assuming that the sentence you want added comes at the end of the last paragraph under the first heading on page 1, Tourism Waitaki Limited, letter of shareholder expectation?
Sorry, Jim, you're on to the LOE. Yes, that is correct. Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? While you're here, do you want to just give us a brief summary on the year, which we're nearly at the end of the financial year, how things have been going, and I guess some of the steps that have been taken over the year to get the tourist promotion activity carried out?
Yep, sure, we can give you an update. Thank you. We've got two obviously streams of work. The penguin colony has seen a very good increase in visitor numbers. We're back to tracking almost at around 90% of our visitor numbers compared to pre-COVID. So it's looking really good in terms of the overall picture. The mix of visitors is almost in line, coming back into line with what it was before. So we do have a large China market that has come back quite strong, but we're seeing the New Zealand, Australian, US and UK markets as well returning really successfully. So it's all looking very positive. In terms of the marketing, we're working really closely with Jade Harvey, who some of you have met, and a company called Great Scott, who are based in Christchurch. And we're really pleased with how that's going. We're delivering really good marketing for the district. Some of you have seen it pretty closely. So yeah, we're really proud of how that's going and how the marketing in general has been tracking, and the reports back that we're getting in terms of that reach. And it's feeding through to things like the steampunk weekend. So that, yeah, we're seeing really good results there.
Yeah, if the Jazz Festival, the Victorian celebrations, and of course the steampunk, which was outstanding. Those numbers are all significant and looking good. In terms of visitor nights, the numbers from Mimby show that visitor nights are up and spend is up. So that's very, very good. It'd be fair to say the feedback is that we're punching above our weight in this region. We continue to work and collaborate with Otago and Southland as well on the Great Southern Way. And we're utilising our resources through there. But I would also like to acknowledge the work that Dr. Phillip has been doing and filling in the meantime as the acting GM. That's put quite a bit of stress onto Philippa and of course the board, who are but are more operational rather than governance at this time, keeping the ship afloat, which has got us in a fairly positive position at this stage as we work through the future. But outside of that, it's a very positive and bullish state, and we're very pleased for your support to be here.
Thank you very much for that summary. It's appreciated, and it's very uncertain time as well for tourism Waitaki in the context of us bringing on an economic development agency of some form. So thank you very much for all the work that you've done, and I know the company wouldn't be in as good shape if it wasn't for the board and Philippa in particular picking up what you've done to actually keep it going out the back end of the COVID hangover and getting things back. And great to hear those visitor numbers coming back to where they were at. So very pleasing. So thank you very, very much for all the work that you've done and all the stuff that I know the directors have done to support the team as well. Right, thank you. The councillors, there was someone happy to move the recommendation. Councillor Cowles, thank you. The seconder for that, Councillor Holding. We receive those statements of intent. Councillor Hopkins.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Fine.
So I'll put that. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, that's carried. So thank you very much. That's all. Appreciate you coming in, Mike and Philippa.
Real smile when you leave.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, because we've been dealing with it, we will go quickly to the next item, 7.8, the shareholder letters of expectation. Obviously been a few comments on those already. I'm not sure, Ms. Parmley, do you want to make any comment on those letters?
No, I'd say the letters have been discussed informally. We've obviously heard from the CCOs today in terms of their intentions and, to what extent they've taken on board what was in the draft letters. That was the status that they were circulated as drafts to them, but it's for council to agree what they want to put to each of those companies in terms of their expectations for the coming year.
Councillor Hopkins.
You're just dealing with them one at a time. I'd like to move that we approve the letter of expectation for Whitestone Contracting Limited as presented, with one amendment on page 3 of that letter, that being the deletion of the last sentence under paragraph 3, business development strategy, and also the correction of a typographic error on that page. So I move accordingly. If somebody seconded it.
Okay, I'm just trying to find that. So it's on page 211 on the
Correct.
agenda, and it's taking out,
For example,
a project around Coomer's development, etc. Yeah. Okay. Do we have a seconder for that? Or
So
do I
just
comment on
my
it?
clarity, you're suggesting take out the whole of section 3 around business
No,
development
it's
strategy?
the last sentence, just the last sentence. And as I say, if someone seconds it, I can speak to it briefly. If it needs to be spoken to.
Probably, do you want to explain your thinking on this?
Well, look, I can't see the reference to a percentage of their work to us in the letter of expectation. So that particular request from the board, I don't think we need to respond to. They've said, can you take out the specific reference to Cameron's Pit? I think it's not unreasonable to do so. In my view, if we're going to amend the return on investment from after tax and before tax, that's something that I think we should get advice, say, from PAR or somebody else before we approve that. So I haven't addressed that matter or I'm not suggesting any change there, but I think as a courtesy, they've asked for something in respect of Cameron's Pit to be taken out, and I can't see any reason why we can't do it. It doesn't in any way damage the overall intent of the letter of expectation. So that's why I've moved what I've moved. It's just politeness, really. They've asked and this is an answer.
Mr. Parmley?
Yeah, I mean, I suspect why that was put in there is, Cameron's Pit is a significant asset of the company, and I know that Whitestone were looking at how they realise the potential for that. I don't think it necessarily needs to be in there explicitly, as we haven't referred to other parts of the company, so it could be taken out. But I would say that in coming forward with a business development strategy, you'd probably want to see where that fits into their strategy along with other elements of the company as well. So it does no harm, I don't think, to take it out, but it's something that we probably want to see in a business development strategy.
So thank you, Councillor Holding, seconding that. That does help explain things. Any further comment? I'll put it, so it's just that Whitestone Contracting Limited letter of expectation. We adopt that. So those in favour say aye. And against? It's carried. And I assume you've got something to follow that up with, Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, Chair, I would move the adoption of the letter of shareholder expectation to Tourism Waitaki Limited with the addition of the sentence the board has requested at the end of the final paragraph under the heading Tourism Waitaki Limited letter of shareholder expectation for 2024-25. That paragraph currently reads, the shareholder is also very appreciative of the efforts of the board, especially the statement that it is likely that no funding will be required from council for the company to operate at its current level. And they've asked that there's some sort of assurance that if support's needed, it'll be provided. And I think that's, again, perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, support that. I'll happy to second that. Any other comments? Okay, I'll put it then. Those in favour say aye. Aye. And against, that's carried. And Amarama Airfield. Microphone.
Sorry, finally, Mayor Kircher, I would move the adoption of the letter of shareholder expectation to shareholder to the Omarama Airfield Limited with the deletion under the heading, under heading 1, develop and implement a plan for the business that ensures financial sustainability on page 216. I'm proposing that the letter of shareholder expectation deletes the sentence in the last letter, councillor shareholder emphasised 3 matters under this heading, and further deletes the 3 bullet points. I believe that the paragraph underneath that, starting with the words the shareholder notes the progress in this area, etc., relates perfectly to the headline, and the other portion I'm proposing to be removed is retrospective and doesn't damage the intention going forward.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Cowles, thank you. Yeah, I think there's a couple of matters there which I think we are better to have that discussion with the other 50% shareholder to deliver on those rather than the board itself. So pretty comfortable with that. Any other comments? I'll put it. Those in favour say aye. Aye. And against? That's carried. And
That's it.
Acknowledge them.
So we've got a second one there that we acknowledge that no shareholder letter of expectation has been prepared for Waitaki District Health Services, given the transfer of health. I would add, I would move that, but with the addition that in due course, we will prepare a letter of expectation once the shape of the company has been determined. Reason for that is it's going to be doing something different. From the 1st of July, there's an amount of wash up that has to happen for the final or for the current year's annual report, and expect some continuity of getting on with that, but they won't be operating hospital service anymore. So yeah, I think in due course we will be in a position where we can actually set out what our expectations are of the company, and you know, can make sure that they whatever the shape is, that there's a response back with a statement of intent for the rest of that financial year. Palmer, do you comment on that? Concern?
I don't have a concern with that going as an amendment. I would say that there's probably a lot of work to be done before then, which will need discussion around this table as to the purpose and legal structure, etc. of Waitaki District Health Services going forward. I think the transfer of the services means its original purpose is lost, and it will need to agree formally what its purpose is, which then would inform any letter of expectation.
Yeah, no, exactly. Right. Any other comment? Those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Okay, if we can, what's time going? If we can go to 7.3 it is, yes. And we're looking at the resolution to set rates. One of the longest decisions we get to make in a year.
Until we get the initial proposal for representation review.
Just had a warning from the governance advisor that the proposal for the representation review will be even longer, so.
No, not telling.
Anyway. So 7.3 on page 66. And welcome back, Ms. Nichols. So just wait for her to get set up and introduce this one. Find the right page myself. There we go. All right, Amanda.
It's just that.
Okay, so this is the resolution to set the rates for the 24-25 rating year. So it includes all the rates, due dates for payments, and the penalties for the year commencing 1 July 24 and ending 30 June 25. So it's all set out clearly below. I do have a comparison. There were some earlier questions back to 2024 if anyone wants some detail. Other than that, it's legislatively required to set your rates before 30 June, and this is the result.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, but I just have one question, and it doesn't relate to the detail of this. We've been advised that the amount and the rate that 70.72 that Councillor McCone asked earlier may be it. On page 72, there's a headline penalty regime. Is that part of the resolution?
Yes.
Okay, can I just, it does seem, this is a very minor matter, but And the third line there, it reads that that remains unpaid after the due date for that instalment or metered water charge will be added on or after the 25 August. Now, I would have thought we either delete the word the or make it after the 25th. Just doesn't read right. Can that be changed?
Yeah, we can delete the word there.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, so 10 cents, good. I've got just a question around the Amarama water charge, and it's one of my concerns going through this has been the impact of fairly major water upgrade that happened to Amarama and one of those communities with not a lot of ratepayers. And I just want to make sure that we're clear around the numbers. So what was collected last year versus what's proposed to be collected this coming year? There's about $123,000 difference, and the rate that's by the rate going up by $323 per property. So each property generally will have $323 rate increase. But my concern is that I understood we spent about $4 million on that, and some of that will be repaid through development contributions. But the indication of the extra interest is that it would, we're only paying the interest back on about half of that amount. So do we have that number? I just want to make sure that we've got the accuracy in there.
What specific number are you after?
So what for the upgrade, what's the increase in debt for that scheme, and how much of that debt is going to be paid for by rates versus development contributions?
I don't have that detail at the moment. Sorry, I'd have to come back to you on that one.
Okay.
Yep. Is that the figure? Are you looking at the figure on page 70, the $503?
I'm looking at the water rates, urban, on page 70. Amarama $950. So previously that was $627. So yeah, but I think if we can just get that would be helpful to make sure that we've got the right amount in there. So yeah, I imagine like with all of these things, will have been some accumulated development contributions, which will have helped offset some of that cost of the project. But yeah, just understanding how that impacts. This is obviously a problem over this next year for a number of water schemes, those small water schemes, particularly rural ones that have large costs coming for upgrades. So no, further information would be helpful and when you're able to provide that. Councillors, anything else you want to raise out of the rates? Councillor McCone.
It's more of a comment than anything. Look, while we're all not happy with the rate rise, I don't think we've got too many choices. We've had a whole lot of different balls thrown at us down the tunnel in the last 12 months, politically, and what's come down prior with requirements from central government for what we've got to do. But I think we must firstly commend the staff on even getting to this stage where we've got to, even though it's not what we can, is palatable to a lot of us. It is tough out there, but I would make, again, while I'm not happy with it, the current system we use is broken, and we ourselves are going through transformation, and I'd like to see the same situation go through how we set rates and what we collect in the. So while we've got to accept what we have, I think there's a lot of work to do in the next 12 months to actually straighten this up and see where we can go to. So yeah, that's what I've really got to say.
Thank you, Councillor Blackman.
Thank you. I just had a question, probably along similar lines, but obviously the way rates are set for this enhanced annual plan isn't just in line with the existing kind of rating framework. But with respect to the conversation we've had around how the cost of some of these smaller scale but expensive schemes will be shared, would that mean that this picture will look could look quite different based on where we land for the LTP. Like, for example, the Stoneburn scheme and the Bushy Creek scheme has two examples. Like, could it potentially look that there would be another classification for construction loan rates, for example, or how would these schemes? How will the picture look for them on completion of the project? So I guess is what I'm trying to ascertain.
Yeah, so that's something that we consulted on a little through this enhanced annual plan. And something we'll be looking at further through the long-term plan, exactly how they will be funded, whether it's equally across the whole district or what level of contribution they'll specifically make. So it could look completely different for those smaller schemes. Not sure at this point.
So the rates that are set at this stage for those smaller schemes would only include the debt servicing on the small because there's a small portion of the project landing in this year, which is presumably the start of the project. But the only cost that would be as part of that rate set figure would be the interest portion on that small projected debt.
Yeah, definitely. So where there's only a small portion being like loan funded for this 25 financial year, they'll be paying the interest on that in line with the existing rates framework. And then for the next financial year, when we go out to consult for the long-term plan, we could totally change how they're rate funded, and that's when the bulk of the costs will come in. The 26 financial year, you'll start seeing, bigger increases in CapEx across those smaller rural schemes.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I suppose, like all of us around the table, we're all ratepayers, so we're signing our own death warrants. It's unpalatable, but it is necessary. But I would flag a concern going forward that I've identified for my ward. We're paying in the Wahimo water zone $650 more than someone in Oamaru for water supply. And I think one of the things that we need to address is equity across the district, and also the fact that we have to face the possibility of metered water where excessive use becomes the responsibility of the recipient and they pay for it. So that's something that I'll be pursuing going forward, but I'm quite happy to support what's in front of us today.
Yeah, look, I just would like to clarify something, Ms. Nichols. These water rates, including the one that Councillor Thompson has just identified, the Palmerston Zone 1075, and on the next page, looking at Stoneburn, which was one of the suppliers that Councillor Blackler identified, there's a charge of 576. My understanding is that's to help pay for what's there now and its maintenance and its chlorination of the water and et al. It's not. There may be a small portion of it that may relate to loan funding for a capital improvement or improvements in standards, but there won't be a significant saving even if the work's not even if new work isn't done principally in this year, as I understand it. Is that correct? Have I got that wrong? I mean, the way Councillor Blackler put it, it sounded as though there could be quite significant savings, but that these rates aren't just for the new work, are they? They're for the scheme as it is, and those costs will stand.
Yeah, so I think you're on the same page. I'm not sure what you mean by savings. He was talking about in future years when there's the significant CapEx, so not this financial year, but when the big treatment plant is built for these rural schemes going forward, the expensive, not big, the cost, whether that lies specifically with those ratepayers or whether we decide as part of the LTP to share it differently. So I'm not sure what you mean by savings.
Well, I'm sorry, yeah, it was just the way the conversation unfolded. It seemed to me there was an implicit suggestion that what looked as though it would be a cost may not be a cost. And all I was trying to clarify was that these numbers are actual and won't be amended by the fact, by the delays in the start of work or whatever.
No, these costs are actual and necessary.
Thank you. Anything else? Just in reflecting on Councillor Thompson's comments, we have traditionally ring fenced, obviously, funding for water schemes and wastewater schemes, and it's been, if the cost falls within that scheme, the people on that scheme pay for it, and we have consulted on whether we actually change that policy and had some moderate feedback on that one. And I think just echo the comments you made about water metering. I think it is inevitable. We've put off having widespread water metering, but I think it's as the cost of building more capacity in our water schemes gets higher and higher, being able to conserve water and use it more wisely is a big part of actually delaying some of that expense or actually just not having some of that expense. So we'll see how that discussion goes. It will be a key discussion as part of the long-term plan engagement, I'm sure. I do note, though, that there are award service rates where people in Oamaru do pay a lot more for the things that are particularly things that are based in Oamaru. They pay $665 per property, whereas someone in Ahuriri pays $157 and someone in Waihemo pays $148. So there's a levelling out of costs that happen in other ways. So we need to be mindful of that. But I think we all share that concern that the affordability of rates is getting harder and harder, and we definitely need something that fixes the system because it is broken and it's going to be increasingly broken as these significant costs come onto us. So anyway, with that, would someone like to move the recommendation to set the rates? Councillor Thompson, thank you. Deputy Mayor Halaleli, thank you. Any further comments? I'll put it then. Those in favour say aye. Aye. And against? That's carried. Thank you very much. I had hoped that Mandy and Ali and others would be here to thank them for the work that they've done on the annual plan and so on. But yeah, I'll speak to them directly, but to the whole council team, thank you very much for all the work that's gone into getting to this point. No, it's a mammoth effort and a bit of a marathon to get to this to today to actually set the rates. The wording, the rate increases is undesirable, is whether that's changed too far from desirable or whatever. It's it's not a good place that we're in, and it's only gold comfort that pretty much every other council's in the same position as well. So the sooner we can get on to fixing the rating system, the better. So thank you very much, everyone. Now move on to item 7.4, the adoption of dangerous, affected and insanitary buildings policy.
With your permission, I'll move the two recommendations.
And I welcome Tristan Hope to the chamber. And we could say it goes without saying, Tristan, but welcome and thank you. I will allow you to make some comments if you wish to on this. Oh, and sorry, Roger is going to be before you. So, Mr. Cook.
Thank you. The dangerous and sanitary buildings was due to be introduced by Josh Dooley, who unfortunately can't be here today. So I was going to take that one through, and Mr. Hope is here to do the next paper, the animal control dog bylaw consultation. So dangerous and sanitary buildings, one of the main events for today's agenda. We started this back in December 23. where the council approved the review of the policy to incorporate some legislative amendments under the Building Act. We've been to public consultation between March and April. There were no submissions. We've subsequently held the hearings process deliberations where we were directed to update the policy, and the updated policy is before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cook, and apologies for misunderstanding who was talking to which. Right, councillors, anyone other than Councillor Hopkins? No, it's you, Jim?
Well, look, I may have jumped the gun before, but it's a matter that I think we've reviewed. There were no submissions. The document is exactly what we approved to be consulted on, and hasn't been changed other than the amendments that legislation is required. So I'm genuinely perfectly happy to move the two recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McCone, seconding that. Thank you. Any comments? Okay, we'll put it. Those in favour, please say aye. And against? That is carried. Thank you, Mr. Cook. Now we'll move on to the approval of the draft Waitaki District Dog Control Bylaw and Policy for public consultation. And this time, Tristan Hope, do you want to say anything as well, Roger? This is in your particular area, obviously.
Thank you. Yes, I will just introduce this and apologise that Mr. Bardsley is not here to present the report, but Tristan is acting in his role today and will be here to support us on any of the questions councillors have. There again, this has been through a bit of a sort of a warm-up process to get to this point. We've done some pre-community engagement, which has been very positive. I think we got something like about 170 pieces of engagement on that prior to getting to this point. We have brought the original policy and bylaw to council and discussed that through a workshop. We are now at the stage where we're presenting the draft document to go out to consultation. If there's been typos or spelling mistakes identified, I would suggest that we take those out of the meeting and we can resolve those before we go to public consultation on the 15th of July if it's approved today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tristan.
Yeah, so I'm just happy to answer any questions you have or comments around anything in particular through the report and the documents. It was actually 190 plus pre-submissions that we received through Let's Talk Waitaki, which is quite an encouraging number. And the annual registrations all went out with a link to information around this bylaw review. So hopefully, most of our dog owners would have been able to have a look at that and sort of be aware at least that this is happening. But yeah, happy to go through anything in particular.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Thompson, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, I have a couple of questions. Well, first of all, a reminder that under current law, a landowner has the right to destroy a dog if they're found mauling stock on their property. And there seems to be some confusion around the country, and obviously different councils have different rules. So my first question is, do our dog control officers carry a firearm, and are they allowed to use it in those circumstances?
So the Dog Control Act makes it an offence for a dog to be running at large amongst stock. So it doesn't necessarily have to be mauling them if it's just running at large amongst them, so chasing them actively. A dog owner, yes, you're correct, the owner of the stock can destroy the dog. Look, our animal management team don't carry firearms. We felt that that's probably not something that we really want to manage. Control, security, licensing and safe use of firearms. Adds a whole other level of considerations to what we do, and what we do at the moment seems to be working quite well. I mean, most landowners have the ability to destroy a dog if they, you know, if that's happening.
No, thank you. I will actually, for your interest, forward on an article from the North Island relating to the number of offences and that, which might have some interest in terms of comparison where we're trending against that.
Thank you. Councillor Hopkins?
Yeah, look, I have a few questions. First of them on page 104, I'm just asking officers and perhaps my colleagues. I noticed that we've got consultation beginning on Monday, the 15th of July. And I noticed that we're proposing that it ends on the 12th of August, which is slightly less than a month. I'm wondering if colleagues and officers would consider allowing a full month. It just has a nice feel to it, or a nicer feel. So I'm wondering if people would actually accept the consultation running till Friday, the 16th of August. Do you want questions on the document itself now, or do you want those to come a bit later?
Well, just are you denying February's a month?
Sorry?
February's a month. It's 4 weeks.
No. The consultation is.
I'm just having you on. It's
okay.
28 days is the length of a month in some cases. Right. But
1 month.
I'll allow, I'll see if staff want to respond to the request to have slightly longer time.
If councillors wish to set it at a longer time, that's fine. I don't personally see any benefit in extending it that extra days. It is 28 days, I believe, because there's so it's up to council. Generally we don't get we get submissions in the last days, but we don't get them in another 32 days. We get them on the 27th day of 28 normally.
Yeah, I think the fact that you've got a weekend beforehand, gives people some opportunity if they want to make a last minute one that most people have got the weekend that they could do that. So it's not a bad amount of time, I don't think. Yeah, Mr. Cook.
I also believe in hearings process, the hearings assembly has the right to decide whether they'll accept late submissions. So if somebody did come in late, we could still put it forward.
Good point. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Hopkins, next.
Yeah, look, just with the document itself, a number of questions. First of them on page 112, the very opening statement of the consultation of the bylaw, I think the document, the Waitaki District is welcoming of dogs. Now, we then go on to say a large number of pages, all the ways that we're not welcoming of dogs. And in my view, it would be more honest to say something like the Waitaki District is welcoming of dogs that are kept under control by responsible owners, or the Waitaki District is welcoming of dogs with responsible owners. The absolute nature of that sentence troubles me. Then if we go to page 117, there are references there to, first of all, this is where dogs are required to be kept on lead. And then there's a highlighted in red, the commercial areas potentially changed to on lead. And at the bottom there's references to Harbour Terrace and Beach Road for consideration. I think we need to actually determine what we're going to say in those areas, and also eliminate confusion in the document, because there are later references to the commercial areas of Central Oamaru where it stipulates that dogs have to be kept on lead. Where dogs are prohibited, I should say. So I think if it would be possible to have all the information in one place and perhaps pose a question along with it, I think that would be helpful. On page 136, there's a reference to probationary dog owners and how people can be classified as probationary if a council animal control officer has determined that the owner has ill-treated their dogs. Now, I suspect that there would be an appeal provision that should be acknowledged somewhere in the document, I would have thought. And it isn't in that instance. And then if we look at the maps, the first map on page 139, if you look at the colour code, green for on lead, sort of a orangey yellow for off lead, and the sort of salmon pink for prohibited. If you look at the state highway and at least couple of other roads, it looks as though we are allowing dogs to be on those roads off lead. And I cannot believe that's the case, because earlier on in the document, we say all public roads, dogs have to be on lead. So I do think that the mapping needs to change and the colour codes be amended. Also on page 147, I think there's a reference, sorry, is it page 141 perhaps? Bear with me. There's a reference to dogs on the harbour being required to be on lead between sunrise and sunset. But that same, in a later page, it says that they're prohibited from being there at all at night. And I think that information should be contained on one page rather than on two separate pages, because again, it's confusing for people. When I first saw it, I thought, what does that mean, that you can have your dog there at night when the penguins are sort of about off lead? So I'm just suggesting that for clarification, the information regarding those things should be on one page rather than on two separate pages. So those are some, I'm wondering if officers have feedback on those comments.
Thank you. I've struggled to keep up with all of them, but you started at page 112, which is the comment around Waitaki being dog friendly. Yes, certainly we welcome responsible dog owners. So I think that we could potentially look at changing that slightly just to reflect your comments there. You're correct though, the bylaws are really pretty much policy all about what we expect from dog owners, and they do lay out lots of things that dog owners need to abide by. So it is effectively a local rule book. Page 117 was
just that we've got three pieces of information there that are highlighted in red. And there's a later reference to the commercial areas of Central Oamaru where we also then say, I think also highlighted in red, that dogs are prohibited. What I'm suggesting is that the document should actually bring together whatever is proposed with regard to these areas on one page. And I mean, clearly what we either do is say, this is what we're going to do, what's your view? Or we would present the two alternatives and invite people to make a comment. I think we have to reword, potentially change to on lead and for consideration. We have to alight on a position in the document and invite people to comment on it. And what I'm suggesting is that where we are proposing change, all the information about the proposed change should be on one page and in one place.
Yeah, I think we can make it more consistent in that manner and potentially just cross-reference, if it's not possible to have it on one page because of the way that the bylaws laid out, potentially just cross-reference so that people know where to look. All references to the commercial areas of Oamaru really should be in red, just to show that that's the main one of the main considerations for change. So, did you want to discuss the other points?
on page 12 of the document, or page 139, there was the comment about the colours of the road. I think it's a yellow road, but then there's an orange off lead indication, and it looks a bit similar at the moment.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Cook, you said something?
Yes, a couple of points in response. I'm wondering if Councillor Hopkins' comments around it all being in one place is actually covered by the more public facing document in relation to consultation, and covered in page 159 and 160. I note the comments around the difference in colours, and we will check that, but I do wonder if it's related to the way that it's now graphically produced in the agenda system, and may show greater contrast when it's actually comes up on the website and in the printed documentation.
Suspect that could be the case. Was there one other bit after that? Councillor Hopkins? Was there another bit after?
Sorry?
Dogs in the harbour.
Oh, dogs in the harbour. So, yeah, I think I'll just take on Councillor Hopkins' points around trying to have all the information and is included in one map as possible, and that whole thing of the times. It could be that between sunrise and sunset they've got to be on lead, and that is also the area that they're not allowed to be in the harbour area after between sunset and sunrise.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, no, I'll check through and make sure that that's just consistent and easy to understand.
Yeah. Councillor Kells.
Thanks, Mayor Kitcher, through you. On page 154, I just noticed the prohibited area for Otamatata. Since the playground has changed and a new fence has gone in across there, there's only one entranceway which actually leads the path through the playground from the main township now down to the shops, the pub, the golf course, the walkway, and all of those things. And it is a pathed area. So I think we're probably going to just have to relook at perhaps how that works, because it is a path. It's the walking path for everyone to go through that reserve now. And unfortunately it does, with the new design, go right through the middle of the playground. I'm wondering whether that would be more appropriate to be on lead through there, or whether we can designate it to the pathway or something. But there's only one entranceway on that gate from town through there now, which leads right through the middle of the play area.
Just on that, Tristan, a similar thing for some of the sports fields, and I actually had a letter last week from someone at Western and saying they take their dog through the Western domain. They didn't know they weren't supposed to, and so on. But just making the point that they stay on the road, the gravelled areas and so forth. They're not on the grass. And I think the same issue is around Centennial Park as well, where the whole thing's blanked out, that they're not allowed there, but actually you've got quite a main road going through, connecting neighbourhoods and so on. And so I think, whether there's I'd rather we go out as being slightly more permissive and then pull it back if we get the submissions accordingly, than actually, because I think that's easier than people saying, well, trying to push for the other direction.
Okay.
So if it could be just that, through those areas on the, keep the dog to the sealed area, it's got to be on lead, and they become transition areas and so on.
Yeah, it's possible we could look at some provision around any thoroughfare passing through a sports ground or similar. So yeah, if the dog's on lead, obviously, could be a consideration. Yeah.
I know. I understand what we're trying to control, and I just don't want us penalising the 95 responsible dog owners for the 5 that aren't, or whatever the number might be. Councillor Kels, do you have another one there as well?
No, that was really about the change for there. Thank you.
That's fine. Councillor Blackman.
Thank you. I just had 3 kind of points or suggestions to make. So the first one is in the policy talks about consultation with community stakeholders. Just suggests that we add the Yellow-eyed Penguin Trust at Karaki onto that list. unless I missed it there, apologies if I did. I don't think I saw it. And then in the policy and the bylaw, both sections 2.1 under registration, I'd be quite keen through this consultation process. There are other jurisdictions that do it. I'm not sure if in New Zealand, I can't confirm that, but I know that it is achieved in other councils offshore around the concept of at registration supplying a DNA record, so that if there was a problem area around defecation in public, for example, the grass verge outside Edna McCulloch Kindergarten, which is regularly used by someone or multiple people, that the enforcement team could actually use that as a tool to trace back to the owner. I'd be quite keen to explore if there was an appetite for that. But and then thirdly, obviously that's a little more contentious one, but I think it could be useful in tidying the place up. But and then this one's based on the community conversation that I attended in Kakanui, where and it relates to page 117, item 4.2.1.2 or 4.2.1.3, and then in the bylaw schedule 2 and 3. I'm suggesting, based on what I heard at that community conversation, that we propose through this that in substitute for the relaxation in access along Harbour Terrace, that we conversely, if we have the ability to do so, make the estuary / spit area across the other side of the river on lead or prohibited for dogs.
Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All great feedback. I just are concerned that we're almost getting into the hearings and the deliberations process here. We've come here asking if we can go to consultation on this document. The whole purpose of is to get the public feedback and to get these sort of amendments. We've got an existing policy and an existing bylaw. We're going out to consult on the change of that. In relation to DNA testing of dog feces, we could do it. I think you'd find it very contentious because you couldn't necessarily prove that the dog in question did it. It might be identified to the dog, but somebody malicious could come to your property and relocate it. And we do actually deal with similar contentious matters around fly tipping. So we have people fly tip and then they argue that it's not, they didn't put it there, somebody else put it there, prove I put it there. And unless you actually can see or have witnesses to say that the accused put it there, you could spend a lot of money on DNA testing, and whether you can actually compel every resident in the district with a dog to provide DNA database. Yeah, happy to look at it, but I personally think it could be a step that we don't actually need to take for the cost benefit.
Thank you. And I don't think we're into deliberations. I think, what we're asking for is consideration of things that we actually want feedback on. And if we don't put it in there now, then we won't necessarily get feedback on it. Someone might come up with it themselves, but this is making sure that we get the information back based on the feedback that we want to get back on particular topics. So that's really certainly my intention, and I think of others as well. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, a question for you, Mr. Cook, or Mr. Hope, and I understand that we're governed by the Dog Control Act 1996 and the various amendments. But I wonder, as council looks at the costs that we incur in policing some of these regulations, there's an opportunity, for example, under farm dog ownership, to explore registering the owner rather than going through the process of registering X number of dogs every year. I just think in terms of the process of getting a set of tags every year. I know that myself, I've got a drawer full of coloured tags at home because you just tend to leave the original tag on for the duration of the dog's life. So it's a cost that's been incurred that perhaps we don't need.
Yeah, I mean, as you rightly said, we are operating under the Dog Control Act. Dog Control Act does require every dog to be registered. It doesn't apply to an owner, and I don't believe that we could extend the bylaw to do that because it wouldn't really, I don't think, achieve the objects of the Act, which is the control of dogs. So we need to know, we need to hold information about these dogs in particular. Dogs can change hands and things like that. While the owner might be sort of in one place, dogs can move around. So I think it'd be quite difficult to do.
Thank you. And Councillor Blackley had one of his questions which didn't get responded to. So do you want to repeat that one?
Yeah, I was just inquiring, and it was along the lines of Mayor Kirch's point that if we don't include these conversation points for the consultation, then they may get missed, or we may not get a perspective on it. And it was just around your thoughts on the community conversation that was had around this suggestion of restricting access out onto the spit and around the estuary there, and whether maybe since we're flagging the relaxation on Harbour Terrace, it might be a nice kind of trade-off, yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly important to know. And do you know if the group that met is one of our identified stakeholders? Because we would be going out to them directly if that's the case, and if not, then perhaps they should be. So we should just check on whether or not they're identified as a stakeholder for our engagement, so that we can actually go to them. They can tell us what they think, but because until we've received their feedback, it's difficult to know how this could sort of pan out, really. Like you say, we've got one area where we're proposing relaxing, but another where we potentially could become more stringent. So it may not gel, but really we rely on the submission sort of process through the consultation for that. So, but I'd encourage them to tell us more about that. And Yellow-eyed Penguin Trust as well. I don't think that they're on there, so certainly, and if there's any other stakeholders you think we should be including, I'm happy to include them as well.
Thank you. Just a couple of things from me. It was quite funny. I had a bit of conversation yesterday about representation review with the governance advisor, and I mentioned the potential for putting Western into Corriedale, and I see you've done that on page 144, listing the district's second largest town and as a town in Corriedale. So just see whether we fix that for the time being. We don't want the everyone to know that we're going to move it for the representation review. The other more serious point, I did raise the issue of leads previously in the workshop discussion we had. You know, we have on lead areas and off lead areas, but there's no, I can't see any stipulation around what the length of the lead is, because you know, people will have those retractable leads and so forth, and dogs can still be on a lead, but they can be quite a distance away. And places like the main street, if we're going to open that up, which I think is a good move, for dogs to be on lead, then knowing that there's a, you know, there is a standard there, whether, yeah, whatever a normal dog lead would be, a metre or whatever it is, that just will help with that potentially.
Yeah, we can certainly sort of beef up the requirements if we're considering dogs being on lead in areas that are previously prohibited. Another thing that we can think about doing is sort of stipulating whether or not a dog can be left unattended and sort of tethered by its lead to street furniture or something. It's probably not ideal. So that's something as well that we can think about. Yeah, including, yeah.
Yeah, and very much a case of, you know, the nature of the dog and someone, whether it waits patiently or whether it's barking at everyone going past and, you know, straining at its lead to get to people. So yeah, it's a consideration where even if it's put in there as a discussion point, then people can give feedback on it. So,
yeah,
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, I'd just like clarification on one matter on the bylaw, and then I have two questions about the consultation document. The clarification, I did ask a question on page 135 under 421 probationary dog owners. C says animal control officers have determined that somebody gets classified as probationary if animal control officers have determined that the owner has ill-treated their dog or dogs. My question was and remains, is there, as I suspect there may be, some right of appeal that's not set out in 422, 423, A, B or C? And if there is a right of appeal, should we include that as a piece of information? Just looking at the consultation document, two very quick questions. On page 159, I'm just wondering again, the document begins with a fairly unqualified comment. Our aim is to make the Waitaki District the best place to be a dog. And I'm again wondering if we shouldn't qualify that slightly to say something like best place to be a well-behaved dog or something of the sort. More to the point, or perhaps more fundamental, under the on page 163, maximum dog limit on residential zoned or rural zoned under 2,500 square metres. I think the wording has to change. Currently, dog owners need a permit to own more than 3 dogs on residential zone property, but there is no limit on the number that can be owned. And I think it has to read in rural zones under 2,500 square metres or something of the sort. As the question is, it's meaningless, I think. So I'm wondering if officers have a comment on those two matters.
So on the first question around probationary ownership, anyone who's made a probationary owner receives a notice of probationary ownership. It's a prescribed form in the Dog Control Act, and it goes through the right to object. So yeah, there's no way it can be missed by an owner. It shouldn't be. You mentioned an unqualified comment, which, yeah, I can have a look at. It sounds sort of that potentially we could reword that a little bit. Maximum dog limit wording as well. Yeah, we'll just make sure that what we're saying is what we're actually intending. Yeah, that we can have another look.
Okay, anyone else?
Sorry.
Yep.
Just a really quick, just on the tethering thing, so that will be consulted on, did you say? Just a very specific example came to mind for myself personally, which I think kind of is relatable to other members of the public, where, you know, it's a regular thing. You take your kids for a walk and the dog at the same time. So if you're going to the playground, for example, with the kids, you can't take the dog into the playground, but you kind of join it all in on the, and I'm sure that's the same for many other members of the community. So I'm just wondering if we can be kind of solutions focused in that regard, like realising the kind of practicality of a decision either way.
Sorry, are you asking whether or not potentially there could be some relaxing of the prohibition of dogs in playgrounds? Is that, sorry, am I?
No, you just mentioned that tethering of dogs isn't ideal, but I could think of an example where someone might tether a dog, say if they're with their children and their dog out for a walk through the gardens on lead, and then they stop off at the playground quickly with the kids, for example. What would be a solution that a dog owner could utilise at that point? Otherwise, effectively, the dog owner would need to do two jobs separately.
Yeah, I understand. No, the context of the tethering, I think, was more in the areas that were currently prohibited, and then we're thinking of making more permissive. So sort of high traffic areas, footpaths and things like that. And you obviously recognise that family activity with a dog, as long as it's permitted to be in a place and it's on a lead and it's tethered in a safe, convenient, suitable place, that would be fine. I don't think we'd look at.
Thank you. Sorry, I misunderstood. Sorry about that.
No, it does raise the possibility of tethering children though, so we won't go there today. Wrong bylaw. No, not allowed now. Okay. Sorry.
Sorry, I thought councillor Percival had his hand up at one
Oh,
stage.
didn't see. Did you have your hand up? No. Yeah. Testing the rees. Deputy Mayor Haley.
I'm happy to move the.
Thank you. And second, councillor Thompson. Commenting.
Yes, I'm wondering if the recommendation should also include the consultation, the associated consultation document that Mr. Cook has referred to. And also whether there shouldn't be a reference with amendments as agreed. I'm just wondering, for completeness, whether that would be appropriate. So it would read that council approves the draft Waitaki Dog Control Policy 2024 and the draft Waitaki Dog Control Bylaw 2024 and associated public consultation document with amendments as agreed for public consultation.
Happy with that? Chucked. Okay. Before I put it, yeah, I've allowed, some good discussion here because I think whilst some people just think, well, it's just about dogs and so on, there's a lot of people that are very passionate about dogs and where they can take them and so forth. And it is a source of constant comment on social media and other places, whether it's at the pub or whatever. And it's, so we do want to get it right. We only get one chance every 10 years to review bylaws like this. And the more we've covered off things, the more we think we've got it right, the better. And the more informed the draft is to go out for consultation, the better. So thank you for putting up with some of those questions along the way. But that's, we're trying to get the best out of this one. So thank you everyone who's contributed. So we've got moved and seconded. If there's no other speakers, I will put it. Those in favour say aye. And against, that's carried. Thanks, Tristan, and
Thanks very much.
All the best on the engagement side of things. Councillors, we'll go to where are we now? 7.6. So the council appointment to oversight group for Te Wakahora o Waitaki Health Futures Project. I'll start this off. Yesterday I had a catch up with the Deputy Mayor and I've just had a quick chat with Councillor Blackler. In both cases, it was felt that this might be just not quite, it is just slightly early, this report. There's terms of reference haven't been set overall, so we can understand there are multiple groups that are being organised. This is for very much a governance group, but we've got particularly a Deputy Mayor and Councillor Blackler very involved in the health sector and potentially might be wanting to focus their efforts at in a different level, more operational level. So happy to see what the feeling of everyone is, whether we want to make an appointment today or whether we want to wait until we get some assurance around what the terms of reference are. But Hannah, do you want to speak to that particular point?
Yes, I can do. We did meet online last week with the oversight group and those that are involved. And I thought it would just be a good conversation, discussion to have with the rest of the councillors, but also just making sure that we've got all or whoever the representative is, that we have had a thorough discussion about who, like what the characteristics and what the position description needs to be. So we didn't want to, I think it's important to acknowledge the letter that we have received from Health New Zealand to include District Council representation in there. It doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to actually be a governance team member. So that's what we just wanted to have that open discussion about, really. So just giving it a bit of time, but I just wanted to check with Mr. Palmley and unless there's something in regards to our negotiations or anything that we needed to formalise, then that was all.
Yep, no, it's good. Mr. Palmley.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, you know, whoever is nominated for the council, it doesn't necessarily need to be seen as a permanent representative. As the, you know, project evolves, it might change, but I think it's really important at this formative stage that council is represented, and whether that's a governance team member or whether you want an officer to represent at this stage until it's fully formed. Yeah, I think that's open to you to decide. The invitation has come to council, but I would say having council in there, you know, it's an important piece of work. It was part of, you know, in the end, the agreement that we had around transferring of the hospital services that you know, this council will remain involved in health, in particular in looking at health futures. So this formative stage is important, and council's voice in that process is important, but I think it's for council to decide who, and it doesn't need to be permanent. We can come back to it, you know, once it's evolved as a piece of work.
Thank you. It's helpful. Councillor McCone.
Look, from what I've just heard and subject to Councillor Blacklow's approval, I would be quite happy to move those recommendations.
Okay, and I think taking on board what's been said, so I'm just reading the recommendations themselves. I think if we signal that it is interim, and we'll be able to confirm one way or the other once we get to that point. So, Blacklow. Ms. Carter?
Yeah, I mean, if it'd be helpful, you could, yeah, someone could move a recommendation that appoints Councillor Blacklow for a period of time, so initially 6 months, and then we can review it after that time once the group is established. So it would come back to council to decide. Clearly, I can't move a recommendation myself.
No, but I'm just wondering whether we need that, you know, whether the specificity of 6 months is necessary or not. I mean, if we just are saying it interim, I would have thought that would be enough. But Hannah, do you have any thoughts? Of, yeah, I'm not aware of where the thinking, you know, what stage thinking is at for setting this up. So, you and Alex are probably more akin to that one.
I just think if you add a date onto it, it means it will come back. I always say to people, beware of temporary things in local government. I've seen interim things that have been around for decades.
Okay. Well, on that basis, I'd suggest up to 6 months. We put there, the mover and seconder are happy. Okay. So, and yeah, appointment up to 6 months. Okay. Councillor Kels, did you want to? You're happy with that. Councillor Hopkins?
Well, I think I'm glad we've done this, because I notice on page 165 what I think are two coded messages that are slightly troubling. The project's purpose, for the sake of argument, to design, develop and implement a system-wide integrated model of care that is clinically sustainable. And the first thing, surprise, surprise, they're going to look at is a review of the health services needed, which is expected to respond to clinical workforce pressures that resulted in disruption of local hospital services and closed general practice books, limited after hours and urgent care services, and to ensure future clinical and financial sustainability. Both of those, I mean, the second one particularly hints to me that they are actually drawing a bead on 24/7 ED care. And I want us to fight for that very hard. And I want somebody there at the moment in our corner advocating for that, because I think there's code in there that they're trying to actually modify that. That's how I read that word fog language.
I think, you know, we know the pressures on the health system, including the local health system, which brought about, you know, the unsustainable financial position of, you know, local health services, and the demand on ED, which some of which was generated by deficiencies elsewhere in the local health service. I think, you know, it's important that we're in this group, and, you know, council and community voices represented there to make sure we get the right outcome for the council. I think reading into it intent, when we're being invited to join a group that is about looking at the future, and doing it collaboratively with the, you know, health council and other community organisations, I think probably doesn't get us off to the best start. Really, we need to enter into it with an open mind, you know, that change needs to happen, but that we've got a voice in shaping that change.
Well, if I may, I would just, I did produce a report that hasn't gone on the agenda, but but we went to an infrastructure symposium in Wellington last week. And ex-Minister of Health and Prime Minister Bill English was a speaker, and he was advocating for local control. And he said, look at the hospitals south of the Waitaki River. They're all owned by their communities, and the communities are doing a wonderful job. And they'll look after them much, much better than Health New Zealand ever would, said Sir William English at the infrastructure symposium. And the three of us, Josh Rendell, the mayor, and I, looked at each other and thought, obviously the news hasn't reached Wellington. But that is no longer the situation.
I'm not sure, does he live in Wellington? I'm not sure. Anyway, it's yeah, things have moved on, obviously, and we've got the situation we've got. So where are we up to? We need to put it.
You have a mover, a seconder.
Right, it's no other discussion. We're going to, we'll put it, those in favour say aye.
Aye.
And against, that's carried. So that takes us to the last agenda item, which is 7.9, and following discussions with councillors, I did have a phone call with Michael Lovett from DIA this morning. He's comfortable that we take some more time. The minister is keen to get all of the responses in from all the councils, but given this report which came to us 2 weeks ago and was voted to lie on the table, it's back with us. We haven't fed in any requests for more information. So correct me if I'm wrong, councillors, but yeah, I think the general consensus of those involved in that discussion was that we're not in any better position to make a call on things, and we'd like to talk with officers a bit further about what information we do need to feel that we can make that decision. Any comment, Councillor Hopkins?
Look, yes, my view is that there were ideas floated on the day that perhaps came at very short notice, and which some of us might have had some sympathy for, but really hadn't had a chance to unpack more in greater detail. And I accept totally that officers had no additional information or direction from us, ergo they had to bring the report back as it was presented 2 weeks ago. The one thing I would say is we're supposedly having July off. And to my mind, actually resolving this in August is too late. That's discourteous. So I think if we're going to take time, we've got to commit ourselves to sorting this out within, say, 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something. And if that means a special meeting, so be it. But I think given that the DIA said, yes, you can have more time, I think we actually need to alight on a time frame and commit ourselves to actually getting it sorted once and for all.
Yeah, the indication from Michael Lovett, Deputy Chief Executive of DIA and responsible for local government, was that they definitely would want it by August. And so we do have a meeting on 30th of July that's scheduled, and it could come to that, or it could come to a meeting before that. But yeah, just looking at timeframes. So, councillors, any other comments you want to make? So, Mr. Palmley, that's the situation we're in. I mean, like I say, we don't feel that there's, well, yeah, there's no more information than what was there last 2 weeks ago, and that's up to us to let you know what information we do need. But we need to have that discussion and make sure we give you clear direction on what it is we actually need. So yeah, it wasn't a requirement. It's understanding orders to bring it back to this meeting. So I'm not sure whether it was just the timing, the deadline that meant we had it here today. But anyway, that's where we got to.
It's a procedural matter. If you let something lie on the table, then it automatically comes back to the next meeting.
That's correct. That's your policy.
That's not understanding orders. It doesn't say, but anyway, we can. We've got something that contains no more information, and that's made things obviously no different from 2 weeks ago. So can I, councillor Thompson?
Can I just ask then, through you, Mr Mayor, what information that we need and where do we go to get it? Because otherwise we're just chasing the rolling stone.
Well, that's the thing. I think we need to have that sit down and make sure everyone has the opportunity to feed in what information do they feel that they need? And yeah, we're not going to do that here at this meeting, I don't believe. So my preference is that we move to resolve to let this lie on the table to come back to us by the 30th of July. I'm happy to move that if someone's happy to second that.
I'd be willing to move something similar to that, but I'm not sure that I'd be happy to have, I mean, I don't like the idea of saying it's going to lie on the table again. I would prefer the recommendation, and I'm doing this on the fly, so bear with me. I prefer the recommendation be something like that council sets aside time to consider the full quantum of reallocation of funds from the Better Off program and resolves and agrees that amount at its July 30, 2024 meeting. If somebody, yeah, that's my best stab at the next step at this stage.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I, we're talking about us needing to discuss this. To be fair, do we actually try and give staff a steer as to what sort of information we want?
Well, I'd be happy to, but at the moment, my view is we look at 6500 or something less than that based on the possible saving of some funds for some projects that were identified previously. Or we look at the proposal from Tim endorsed by Hannah, that we look at one of the areas where we've effectively said, no, we won't touch it and we won't reallocate funds. And we may decide to do some more significant reallocation in those areas, which could take the quantum up to 1 million or 1.2, as Tim originally proposed a fortnight ago. Or Councillor Backler originally proposed a fortnight ago.
I mean, this is an example of going around in circles of talking about what we talked about 2 weeks ago. So basically, we just need this to lie on the table until and have it come back on by the 30th of July. We will have the opportunity to provide the information, provide the questions for information that we need to give officers. And so, that can be done potentially even this afternoon. I'm due downstairs to talk to some protesters, so happy for any of you to join me if you wish to come down, but I need to go. This is the last item, so ask the Deputy Mayor just to take over chairing and then close the meeting. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'll move that council will set aside time to consider the full quantum of reallocation of funds from the Better Off program and bring a report for decision to the July 30, 2024 meeting of the council.
So I think we have two. One is the current, like the recommendations provided, and are you amending? Are you seeking to amend the recommendations?
Yeah, rather than the four that are there now, I'm moving that single one based on the conversation we've just had.
So the intention is to consider other opportunities to reallocate and discuss it a bit further with council and our officers, with a view to bring an updated report prior to the 30th of July. Is there a seconder to
Chair.
Can you repeat your amended?
That council set aside time to consider the full allocation of the full amount in the reallocation of funds from the Better Off program and bring a recommendation for decision to its July 30 meeting, July 30, 2024 meeting.
Because that sounds as though.
I'll just defer to the governance advisor.
Through you, Madam Chair, that sounds as though the report is coming back from the governance team and not from officers. That's the way that reads. Is that correct?
Well, I used the word council deliberately because I would have thought it could have included both.
I think the intention is for us to have further discussion.
We have to have a
about it,
conversation, yeah.
consultation with our officers, and then we bring back an amended report. That's the intention of deferring this. Is there anyone that seconds it? Seconded by Councillor Blackler. Any comments from our staff? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to vote against this motion because I believe that we had a recommendation from staff, and this is a shift of governance into operational space. And whilst I understand and sympathise the desire, I'm not comfortable with the process.
Any other speakers? Councillor Carls.
Yeah, actually, in similar vein, I'd be voting against this as well. My reading of the recommendations, we've got some information here that there is a discussion also to go back to community boards and community groups and agree to commence work of finding alternative funding sources. And I believe that's what is for the staff and team to find, and that we have to trust that will happen. I feel if then we feel that that hasn't happened correctly, then it's up to us to hold that to account. But we've got a very clear path set here as to how we could move forward.
Okay, any other speakers? So we've got two against, Councillor Hopkins.
Well, Madam Chair, speaking to it, I don't think I am delving into the governance space. Sorry, I don't think I'm delving into the operational space. I don't think I'm delving, sorry, forgive me. I don't think I'm delving into the operational space. This was a whole set of programs that were comprehensively discussed by us right at the outset, and we've had a timetable from Mr. Palmley indicating how many times we've looked at it. And to the extent that the program involved, or the Better Off funding program involved things that we weren't going to do and hadn't planned to do that were additional to what was our core work program, I would have thought that the quantum that we would now reassign to local water done well is something that the governance team can determine. And a fortnight ago, one of our own members said, hey guys, we could actually reallocate a lot more than 650,000. We could reallocate up to 1.2 million, or we could reallocate 1.2 million. That same councillor wouldn't actually consider or accept the idea of reallocating up to 1.2 million. So in the end, we ended up with nothing by way of a resolution other than the matter lie on the table. But it does seem to me that we are perfectly entitled to discuss whether we want to actually take some more money out of some of the other funds to increase the amount available for local water done well, to cover costs we know we're going to have to incur either to actually upgrade schemes or develop a water services plan. And we've been told we can, as long as we've got an answer by August, DIA is happy. That's the information we've been given by the Mayor, and in good faith, I would have thought we would have needed to accept that. Hence what I moved. If you vote against it, so be it. Well, then consider the recommendations in front of us.
Okay, any other comments? So because the amended motion was seconded, we'll put it to a vote. So my understanding is the amended recommendation is to set aside time to discuss the Better Off Funding Program allocation and proposed projects, and bring a recommendation back to the next council meeting by the 30th of July. On the 30th of July. And that amended recommendation was moved by councillor Hopkins, seconded by councillor Blackler. There's been a discussion about it, so I would think we're ready to put that to a vote. So all in favour of the amended recommendation?
Aye.
Okay, those against? Can you make a show of hands, please? Just to check you're awake. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Okay, so the recommendation has been lost. And the remaining recommendation. Do we have a mover and a seconder for the original recommendation? Okay, moved by councillor Thompson, seconded by councillor Cowles. We'll put it to a vote. Those in favour of the original recommendation as provided in 7.9 report. Moving in totality, recommendations 1 through to 4. Okay, those. Okay, any speakers? Yes, councillor Cowles.
Look, as you know, I wasn't party to the previous meeting on this, but reading through this report in my mind, I feel that we've been asked, we've had a requirement to move some funding. We have, in discussion with community boards and community groups, agrees to commence work to find alternative funding for those sources. It's about pots of money and where we find these pots of money. There's no argument that we have to get local water done well and a plan, a water plan in place, and we're going to need funding for that. Where the funding comes from, well, this assures some of that. One way or the other, we've got money that we need to spend, and it's about, in my mind, complying with the request from the DIA, finding that money to move forward, and that's why I'm happy to second this motion.
Okay, councillor Blackler.
I'll be speaking against, I mean, my position remains unchanged from the previous meeting. The landscape's changed. There's a number of matters in the table there that deserve some scrutiny given the change in landscape. And yeah, I just feel we can and should do better. We've all discussed this morning the imminent wave of costs ahead of us, and we've got an opportunity here to redirect some funds, and we're just turning it down.
Okay, councillor Hopkins, and then I will.
I have a quick. I'm not going to vote against it. I think I share councillor Blackler's sadness that we haven't clearly and in more detail considered a more significant reallocation. That was our fault. I did circulate a suggestion to councillors and we didn't pick up on it, or we didn't discuss it any further. I'm wondering if the movement seconder would allow one very slight amendment to the recommendation, namely that the recommendation 1 would read that council approves the current reallocation of funds, etc., etc. Nothing else would change. And speaking to it, it does give us then an option. If we want to come back and say, hey, we've thought of a bit more, we can do that, provided we do it before the end of July. So I'm wondering if the movement seconder would accept that.
Okay. All right, the slight amendment to the original recommendation. Can you Say that again, please.
Well, it doesn't, it's not an amendment. The mover and seconder have agreed to have it as a recommendation. So it will just read approves the current reallocation of funds, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Anyone else to speak for? All right, are we ready to vote? All right, so we'll put it, those in favour? Okay, those against? Councillor Tim Blackwell would like that recorded. Okay, that's carried. All right, thank you. I think that might be it for the. Yep, I think that brings our meeting to a close. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us and for all the discussions that we've had today. Okay, we'll close that meeting now. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna.